for you. See if you guys can hear that. And yeah, that'll let us know if you can hear what's going on. Let me know if there's any weird noises too, like there usually is. It was actually pretty funny. I had somebody comment last week on the video that it's always so funny how noisy my setup is and how I don't really care. And yeah, that's kind of the truth of it. Let's see here. All right. Sounds like we're live. So, hey everybody, welcome. Another Sunday, another live stream. Wanted to jump back on now that I've got a little bit of time on Sundays to be able to chat and hang out a bit. Lots to talk about today, but one big topic that I wanted to chat a bit about that we'll talk about as we go through everything is what I titled the video about not being able to buy your way out of practice. And it's been a conversation that I've been having with a ton of people lately, and I think it's something that just isn't getting talked about enough. So I wanted to talk about it a little bit. The idea being that in this world of YouTube gear, tube, synth world, particularly in the synth gear world, I mean, I'm sure it exists in guitar pedal world and whatever, but in the synth world, it feels like it's a lot where people seem to think, or there's this kind of general impression that if I buy the thing, I'll be able to use the thing in such a way that I'll be able to be a world famous talented musician because I bought the thing. And it's funny for me, at least, how that happens in this world, in like the synth world, because as a guitar player my whole life, it's not something that was ever a guitar thing. It's not like, oh, if I buy that Gibson SG, I'm going to sound just like Angus Young from AC/DC. Or if I buy that Fender Strat, I'm going to sound just like Stevie Ray Vaughan. And it's like you would sometimes buy the guitar that had a certain tone you were looking for because artists that you like played that guitar and you liked that tone. Or if you were doing covers like I did a lot, you would want to have stuff that kind of sounded similar in tone to what the people were playing that you were doing the covers of. But it's really funny in this world, particularly, people think that, or it seems like, and correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, I want this to be a chat, so please put stuff in the chat, your thoughts and questions on this. But it seems to me that there's this big impression that the gear is magic, and if you just get the right piece of gear, you will be able to write hit songs, perform live in front of crowds, be a huge producer, be able to improvise, be able to do just all these things magically because you got the magic piece of gear that lets everybody do that. And it's funny because I feel like that's a thing that's out there, but there's no real examples of it. I don't know where it's coming from. I don't understand why people get this idea in their head so much. And I think that there's kind of a second part of this that I want to know what everybody thinks. And this is the part that I think maybe gets talked about more than others, which is this idea that there's no personal responsibility in that. It's somebody else's fault because they sold it to me. They made me buy it. They told me it was good and I bought it, and it didn't magically make me a hero, so it's their fault. And so I don't want this to come off too cynical because I'm very much about music being fun and exciting to do, and it's a great way to spend time, and it's a great creative outlet. There's a lot of pleasure to be had making music. So I don't want to sound negative about this, but this idea has been kind of making me laugh a little bit. And so I wanted to talk to everybody on here about it and see what your thoughts are about this idea that that gear is magic. It makes you a really good musician. And then when it doesn't make you a really good musician, either the gear sucks or the person who said it was good is to blame because they made you buy it and they made you think that it would magically make you sound good. And if it didn't, it's their fault. And I just want to get into this idea because it's something that we talk about in my courses a lot. And it was kind of the broader purpose of building the two courses that I built, the performance course and the production course, was the idea that the gear doesn't really matter. Like, you can use any gear you want, you can play any genre of music you want, you can really do any style you want. But for me, the most important thing is not investing in the next magic box, but investing in yourself as a person, investing in your skills and your ability to learn, your ability to use the gear will go much farther as an investment, whether that's money to buy courses, whether that's time invested in practice or whatever. But investing in yourself and your use of the gear is way, 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 way more important than the investment in the particular gear. And so it's one of the reasons why on this channel all the time when I get asked, is this good? Is this bad? What's the best of this? What's the best of this? I always try to put it in context because for me, there is no good and bad. There is no, this one's better than that one for everybody. It's all kind of context based. So, what's your skill level? What type of music are you making? What other gear do you have? What are you hoping this will accomplish for you or with you using it? And that's kind of the context that everything goes into on whether or not gear is good or bad for you as an individual. But for everybody that's out there, everybody has their own set of things that are important to them that they need to make the music that they want to make. And so I just want to throw that out there as kind of a background context as we talk about other stuff today. But let me know in the chat if you have comments or thoughts on this, because I think that there's a lot of lip service paid to this, but I think that it needs more in-depth thought and consideration and value placed on practice and learning and all that stuff, whether that learning is from watching YouTube videos like this or others, whether it's from paying for a course, whether it's getting a special tutor, whether it's getting a mentor who can teach you certain things and guide you along the way. But personal growth and learning and education and expanding your own skill set, for me personally, I believe that is way, way, way more valuable than any piece of gear. Now, every piece of gear, has its own value, whatever that is to the individual. But I think that without practice and learning and putting in time to explore and have fun with and play and actually learn to play your stuff, without putting in the time for that, you're kind of shortchanging yourself. You're spending a lot of money that you shouldn't be spending on a lot of gear that you shouldn't be buying if you're not equally investing in, whether it's time or money, in yourself and your learning and your education on how to use the gear. And I know not everybody can afford to spend the money on it, but that's okay. You don't have to. You can actually just spend the time. You can practice. Now, a lot of times spending money on things like courses or one-on-ones or whatever, those can be things that can help shortcut a bit of that, because it can help make your time that you spend more effective, more efficient in what you're focusing on. And it can inspire you in certain directions to look into things in a certain way. But it doesn't ever take the place of practice. You still have to do the practice. It's kind of like buying QuickBooks and thinking that your taxes will be finished when you buy the software. It's like, no, you actually have to use the software. You can't buy, Microsoft Word and then say like, okay, where's my book that I wrote? Well, you have to write the book. You use one as a tool to do the other. So it's not that you buy a thing and then the process is completed for you, if that makes sense. And I think that there's another piece to this too, which is the whole conversation about AI. And it's one of the things that I always kind of like, I'm a little bit confused about why you would use AI to make music. Because for me, the pleasure of music is from the process of making the music. So why would you want something that took the process away and it just made an end product? Now, if that was your goal, if your goal was to make a product, then yeah, sure, I get it. But for me, that's not ever really the goal. The goal is to enjoy making music and to do it as an artistic expression. So why do you want a computer or a software to do the artistic impression for you rather than you doing it? It kind of takes away, it robs you of the pleasure of doing the thing, right? And so it's all kind of tied all together for me. So that's what I wanted to talk about as a broader context today. And then we can talk about mechanics and gear and setup and making some music and all that kind of stuff. So let's see what the chat says about this out of curiosity. All right, let's see. Christopher's here. Hey, Erica, thank you. Good morning, Vincent. What's up, James? Alessio, unknown artist. Hey, what's going on? Christopher, there may be not so much videos out there in the synth YouTube where people practice with gear. There's some from Jeremy Redmeans Recording where he tries to get everything out of it, learn to find the sweet spots. Yes. Vincent, EasyBot templates making careers. Interesting. Best YouTube videos are when I get inspired to try new stuff out with my gear I already have. I agree with that. And yes, it takes time to get your gear to know and practice to use it like all other instruments. I totally agree. Yeah, I mean, there are a few things out there, and I think that, you know, it's funny you mentioned Jeremy from Redmeans Recording because I had somebody bring him up recently in a conversation where we were talking about this, and that was that whole idea of kind of blaming the messenger. They're like, Jeremy does this stuff and it sounds amazing, and so it makes me buy it, and then when I buy it, I don't sound amazing, and I'm like, yeah, because you're not him, right? He has hundreds and thousands of hours of practice of being a musician, using whether it's modular or hardware or synthesizers or samplers or drum machines. So he's bringing all of that context into a brand new device that just came out. So he's starting on a brand new device miles ahead of where 99.9% of people are. So yeah, it's going to sound amazing when he does that. You could give him two sticks to bang together and he would make a cool percussion pattern, right? So it's like and then they would say like, yeah, he's shilling for the companies or he's whatever, and whether it's him or somebody else, they're making me buy it. It's like, no, they're not. They're demonstrating the potential of a thing that still has to be used by you, right? It's like saying that, you know, somebody drives a sports car and shows that it can go a certain speed or that they can win a race with it. That doesn't mean that you'll win a race with it. It doesn't mean you can buy it and never learn how to drive and then wonder why you didn't win the race with the car, if that makes sense. So I think that there's a certain amount of personal responsibility where you have to say, okay, I'm going to actually spend, whether it's money or time or whatever, I'm going to invest in me as an artist so that I can do some of these other things, so that I can make things sound like that. And you know what? If you spent the number of hours that people like Jeremy spend on his art, you may or may not sound as good as him. Because part of that is talent and part of it is practice. But it's funny, there's a saying that with my son, who's a soccer player, we used to talk about this all the time, that this great saying, which was hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. And it's one of those things, like, you can have talent, but if you don't put in any work, you're still going to suck. And if you maybe don't have the talent, but you work really, 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 really hard at something, you can probably get pretty good at it. The magic comes when you have talent and you work really hard, that's where you have these people who just excel and they become amazing at what they do. Those are the people that I look up to because I'm like, I could never do what you do. And it's always, they're the kind of next level, whether it's artists or athletes or whatever, in whatever thing that they're into. So let's see here. Yes, imagine how much Rembrandt practiced to become the greatest painter and used a lot of different techniques. Yeah, I mean, it's funny because you bring up, famous artists, painters. When you go, a couple years ago when I was in Amsterdam for ADE, we went to the Van Gogh Museum. And it's so interesting because when you see you see these famous paintings that are the ones that everybody knows, but then there's literally thousands of others, including, sketches and doodles and little things that they weren't these masterpieces. And it's kind of a cool window into the process of not only an artist making art, but into the process of an artist becoming an artist, right? Like nobody starts out as a virtuoso musician or a world-renowned artist or sculptor or painter or whatever. They all start somewhere, just like you, right? Everybody starts somewhere, and a lot of times the biggest difference, talent can be a difference, but the biggest difference is work and effort, right? And in the case of music like this, it's practice. It's education, it's learning, whether it's from free YouTube videos, whether it's from buying a course, whether it's from, taking one-on-ones or whatever. You're learning to do something with these things that you've spent money on. And it's always kind of funny for me that people will invest so much money in gear and then not take the time to learn to use the gear, right? It's like if you bought a Ferrari and you only ever drove it in reverse, because you never learned how to use the forward gears. For me, it just doesn't make any sense that you would spend so much money on this gear that we all spend so much money on, and then not invest the time in practice and and potentially the money in a course in order to be able to do that stuff. So it's, that's kind of the broader context here. Let's see here. That's why I like VCV Rack, so that I can, as a total beginner, can practice and explore what it's all about before buying any physical modules. Yeah, for me, that's what VCV Rack is great for. I get asked about VCV Rack a lot for people thinking about getting into modular, and there's two sides of it for me. One is it's a great place to learn modular, so learn the details of how to connect modules together, what they do, signal path, that kind of stuff. If you ever watch Omri Cohen's stuff on YouTube, he's got some fantastic videos on VCV Rack. So definitely check that stuff out. But yeah, it's a great way to learn the mechanics of it. Now, the second piece to VCV Rack for me, as far as learning modular, is that what you don't get out of it is the physicality of it, which for me is the largest part of modular. It's the thing I love the most about it, is the actual patching cables, plugging things in, making signal paths, and then actually manipulating things and turning knobs and seeing and feeling how those things interact with one another. So you can get part of the way there. And I think it's great the way that you just mentioned that in the comment, using it as a way to start down that path to decide if you want to do it more or to decide which modules to buy. I think it's a great way to do it. It's also a great way to test things out. If you already have some modular and you can connect to your computer, you can use things in your computer to decide if you really do want that other module. And so you can try it in VCV Rack or even a plugin in a DAW or whatever. Try it and see if it, does that effect really do what you want it to do in your thing? And if it does, then get the module. So you're not spending money on something that you don't need to spend money on. It's a great way to learn and experiment. Okay. Let's see here. Practice can definitely be the most unglamorous and challenging part of the process. It is, but I do believe it is the most important. I agree totally, but sometimes I feel like learning my gear becomes a way to be overly perfectionistic and avoid finishing stuff. Yes, I get that, and I think that a lot of people do get sucked into the details when you're learning, or or maybe getting sucked into the details in the name of learning. One of the things we talk about a lot in my courses is experimentation as learning. Take time with gear, and don't always sit down, at your gear and say, "I'm going to write a track today," or "I'm going to perform a live set today," or "I'm going to work on my live set." Sometimes it's like, "I'm going to learn this module. So I'm just going to put a kick drum on just so I've got something to keep time, and I'm going to play around with things, and I'm going to put it through effects, and I'm going to try different things that it does, and I'm going to modulate it with different things." So that experimentation can be great learning. And it's really valuable. And I think sometimes we don't put enough value on that, on the actual, the value of experimenting with things as educational. It can just feel like it gets dismissed when people are like, "Oh, I'm just noodling," and they just make it sound like it's, you're just screwing around. And you're going back to the painters and, famous artists. Look at how many doodles there were from people like Leonardo da Vinci, who had notebooks and notebooks and notebooks and notebooks and notebooks of things that were not masterpieces, not inventions that were ahead of their time. They were just doodles. They were just sketches. And that is experimentation, trying things, learning things. And you can do that with your hardware as well. There's not a magic thing that's going to learn for you. So spending the time with it is maybe unglamorous, but don't sell yourself short. If you've spent all this money on gear, why not invest in the time to actually learn it? Let's see here. Your course was great, but I still need to take the time during or after the course to take it to practice. Nobody can do it for you. Yeah, I totally agree. I think that as we talked about in the course, that's one of those things where the course can help point you in the right direction, or help give you some context of how to look at things to make decisions on your own, or maybe some ideas about how to more effectively practice. But that still doesn't take the place of practice. And so for me, paid courses like that they're shortcuts, because often if you don't have somebody that gives you a little bit of direction, that has some experience, you may end up just kind of wandering and spending a lot of time wasted, maybe not practicing in an effective way, or practicing the wrong things, or building up bad habits, or whatever. So it's not a replacement for practice, but it's a shortcut to help make you more efficient in your practice, is kind of the way I look at it. So, hey Peter, what's going on? Some gear can make the process more enjoyable, and that makes it worth it. Far more enjoyable to sequence drums on an Oxy versus something like Steppy. Totally agree. And that's where you guys have heard me talk on these streams a lot, as well as in the courses, that one of the most important things for me when I purchase gear is workflow. And that is 100% that. I want my gear to be inspiring. I want it to be fun to use. I want it to stay out of my way when I have an idea, or I also want it to help fuel ideas and not be clumsy and clunky and less fun and kind of suck the fun out of doing the thing. So don't confuse that. For me, like, some gear can't be better than others for you as far as a workflow thing. My point is that gear won't magically make things for you. And so finding gear that's inspirational, I think, is important. And that's a great segue into what I want to talk about as well with the Oxy today. But it's also not something that will replace. You still have to learn the Oxy in order for the Oxy to be more fun. Like, you can't just hopefully have it just make music for you. So I do agree. Let's see. If you know why you're getting the gear, then it's likely worth it. If you're getting it because someone else has it, may not be helpful. Yes, I totally agree with that. And I also think I would check myself on the why. Is the why because it sounded great for somebody that I saw online? Or is the why because a person that I like said this was a good thing. So it depends on what the why is. Sometimes the why is, oh, I don't have I don't know, pick your thing, a delay, and I really want a delay, whether it's a pedal or a module or whatever. And so I'm going to get a delay. Now let's start to look at what the delays are, who's got them, what's good, what works for my workflow, what works for my needs, and that'll help with that decision process. So I get the why thing, just want to always kind of check ourselves and make sure the why isn't, the answer to why isn't because Jeremy Blake sounded awesome with that thing, so now I want it, so I'll sound awesome. That whole kind of idea there. Let's see. Although I'll keep buying Strats, one of them will make me play like Stevie Ray Vaughan. Yeah, well, it's funny you say that because the one guitar I still have is a Strat right over there, and it is. When I was playing in bands, even in high school, I had my strap for my Strat was black with like the white musical notes because that was what Stevie Ray Vaughan had. So it's funny you bring him up, but yeah, I mean, and again, it doesn't replace the practice, but there are things that are, again, inspirational. You're playing something that reminds you of an artist that you really like, that can be inspirational. Or something that has, certain pickups that have a certain sound. If you replace the pickups the way he did in his guitars, or if you tune down the way he tuned his guitars down and played with really super heavy gauge strings like he did, that might give you a different sound. But again, it doesn't replace the practice. Like, you're still not gonna play like him. No one will play like him no matter how much practice they put in. So it's like, it's a funny example. But I think that in our world, there's this weird thing that we just think that the gear will do the thing for us because somebody else made it sound good, which is, I think it's an oddity of the world of hardware synths. So let's see. What if you can't get motivated? That's an interesting question. I mean, it goes back to the idea of why are you making music? The thing, and this is going to be, the answer to that question is going to be different for everybody, but I make music for the pleasure of making music. So I don't ever feel like I need to get motivated to do something fun, right? Like, pick anything in your life that you like. That might be, going for a bike ride. It might be, I don't know, playing board games with your family. It might be, traveling. It might be eating a certain type of food. If it's something that you really love, you never have to motivate yourself to do it. So if you're having to motivate yourself to make music, I would ask myself, why do I need to be motivated? Like, what's the end goal here? Is it, because if music's not fun, and it's not an enjoyable endeavor and a creative, enjoyable endeavor, then what's the point? Then why are we doing it? Unless the point of it is output, in which case, use AI. You don't ever have to be motivated. You can just put in a prompt and you'll get the thing out afterwards. Let's see. Any people with a bit heavier psychological issues or stuff like ADHD that hinder you from practicing or performing, invest without a doubt sometimes. Also dealing with routine, stress, and life overall. Yeah, I mean, I think obviously music has a different, it serves a different purpose for different people, right? Some people, they're music producers for a career. It's their job. They have deadlines. They have to create this jingle for this commercial for this company by Thursday, right? So this isn't necessarily for everybody, but what I'm talking about here is kind of the broader idea of gear being the magic answer rather than practice. And I think sometimes, again, for people who have difficulty with attention to things, sometimes it can just be a matter of how you're practicing can really help. Like, for people who have difficulty, keeping attention on one particular task, sitting there doing scales on a piano is probably not going to be a super effective way for them to learn, because they're going to do it 10 times and get super frustrated and not want to do it anymore. But if their learning is more that experimental learning, like we were talking about before, where you're getting in and you're saying, you know what, I want to play around, I want to turn knobs, I want to do different things and have different things interact, that can be really stimulating and exciting in order to help keep focus on whatever you're doing. So again, it goes back to, I think, why you're practicing and how you're practicing can, I think, it can work differently for different people, kind of depending on what the challenges are and the struggles are in order to practice in the first place. Let's see, Vincent, they say the guitar is the easiest to learn and the hardest to master. Maybe they don't own an Octatrack. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where, you can pick up a guitar and you can learn, Smoke on the Water with power chords in a few minutes and you're probably good. But to actually be able to play something and learn and improvise and know where, positions are on the neck and scales and stuff like that, whole other world. And I think the same goes for a lot of other instruments. Like if you think about drums, it's pretty easy to do a simple rock beat on drums, but then to become an actual drummer where you're learning fills in different times and you're doing polymetric things, and it's like it's whole other world. And I think the same goes for this hardware, and people don't necessarily approach it the same. They're like, well, why am I not at the end? I've been working at this machine for 3 hours. I should be a master at it by now. And it's like, you know what? All this stuff, no matter what it is way deeper than that. Even the most simple thing is way deeper than that. So it's like, don't sell yourself short and invest the time in learning and getting better at things in order to be able to have that fun making music without having to think as much about it. But that doesn't just come by itself. There's a lot of time invested in that first. Let's see here. Sometimes you get gear and then you find out it either didn't fit with your workflow or you didn't like it. Totally. That happens to me all the time. I buy and sell things all the time. How do you use the launch control? That's a funny question. Like right now, I'm using it to control the 1010 black box. But how do you use the launch control is such a funny question, because it's, for me, this is one of those things that's like, it's like having, I don't know, like a power strip. It's like, when I need things, I'm just going to plug it into that. And it's like, oh, I need one for over here. Cool, I've got one. I'm going to take it out of the box and just put it over there. For me, the launch control is kind of like that thing that sits on the shelf. And then as soon as I need something to control something, it's what I pull out, because it's super easy to program. It's, it's durable. It always kind of works. You can save presets in it. Like, it's one of those kind of utilitarian things for me. It's kind of like having extra, patch cables or USB cables or whatever. It's that thing that's just always ends up there. So I'm using the 1010 black box for my time stretched samples. So anything that's like a longer loop. And so with this, I have it set up so that it can just be my, I have it set up as volume control and pitch. For each one of the samples that's in here. So when it comes time to play something, what I would generally do at the start of a show is I would just push go on all of these. So they're all launched, ready to go as soon as I hit start. And then when I hit start here, right, now they're all going. So they're all going in the background. And here I have tracks 1 through 8 volume, and this is tracks 1 through 8 pitch. And then this row here is tracks 9 through 16 volume, and then this is 9 through 16 pitch. And so, for example, if I want to bring in, let's say something percussive, right? Right, so I have these 2 percussive loops, then I can pitch them. So they just keep going in the background. And then when I want to take them out, I take them out. If I don't bring in, let's say, a sub, or a different type of sub, Then I have some things up here like some top loops. So I can use those things to kind of build tracks around, and all of those things are just looping here. And then when I don't want to use them, I just take them out, right? So they're still going there in the background. So if I want to bring in a different thing later on, so I can just bring those things in and out. So that's what I'm using the launch control for with the black box. There's times when I use the launch control to control Ableton. It works really great for the Electron devices. So Octatrack, because you've got 8 tracks on the Octatrack, you can set this up to be 8 volume faders. And then you've got 3 assignable parameters per track in that sense. And you can set the buttons up to be mutes or switch between audio tracks and MIDI tracks, or record arm, or all kinds of things. So you can set it up to be all kinds of things. For me, at the price, it's amazing, and it's one of those things that's just kind of it's a utility thing that I just kind of always have in case I need something, and I just pull it out. And I have a few MIDI controllers like that. I have this one. I also use the Chic N32 if I just need knobs, because again, it's small, super easy to program. But yeah, these are kind of utility devices for me. So that's how I use that. Let's see here. What's next? Tapping into endless learning sources is a nonstop endeavor. I totally agree. And that's why, obviously I have paid courses that I do, and I've taken a bunch of paid courses as well from other people. And one of the big advantages of those is that it doesn't have to be an endless endeavor of nonstop YouTube doom scrolling, because you can kind of filter through the stuff. And that's one of the things that all the information you need is available for free on YouTube, 100%. The only thing a paid course does is it depending on who's teaching it, if you like the way they teach, that can be something that can be more effective to you. But the biggest advantage for me is it helps distill information down, so you don't have to watch 1,000 hours of YouTube to get 10 hours of valuable stuff. You can just watch 10 hours of a valuable course. And so that's one of the biggest advantages for those. I've taken some courses that are incredibly valuable because they get right to the point of what I want to work on. And then there's other ones that I'm like, why did I pay for this? It didn't help me at all. Didn't point me in the right direction. It's fun to do, but whatever. So yeah, I think that that's one of the blessings and curses at the same time of the internet, is that you have all the information in the world out there for free. The problem is that it's buried inside of a whole bunch of totally useless, time-wasting information. So when you're paying for a course, you're not paying for the actual information. You're paying to not have to sort through all of the crap to get to the information, if that makes sense. So if the courses are good. So that's what I would say. What's going on, Ed? Good to see you. Sorry you couldn't make the call yesterday. Let's see here. Mike Hale, great to see a live stream. Love to have you here. Love improvising. It's your practice sessions. That's awesome. I love improvising too. Do you know how close Morph Modular is to make official release of their cases? Yeah, very close. I think they're in the process right now of building. So I think they already have everything finalized. They have all of the electronics done. They have all of the parts made. So now they're just assembling so that they can do official launch. So it should be soon, like within the next month. You should be able to see those out there, I would guess. That's my guess. I'm waiting too. I can't wait to get the final case, as I've had this prototype for a while now. I'm excited to get the full-blown final version, which I got to see at Superbooth, and it's awesome. The new case is so good. All the work that they put into developing and turning this into something that's really unique and special. is very cool. So I look forward to when the Morph case comes out, but it should be pretty soon. Well, check. Sometimes they pop into these live streams, so if they do, we can ask them live in the chat if they end up. So if there's anybody from Morph, they want to know when the cases will be ready. Let's see here. James, hard rent's supposed to be activity to get away from stress, but then becomes stressful when you don't feel progress or flow. Yeah, and I think that, we've talked about this before, James, but the thing is that I think a lot of us use music as a way to get away from stress, so we don't want to stress about it. And that's another way that having some guidance, whether it's a mentor, whether it's somebody that you know who knows how to do this stuff, whether it's a local synth or modular group where you can get advice from each other, whether it's YouTube videos, whether it's paid courses, whether it's coaching, whatever it is, that can help those log jams that create that stress. When you don't feel like you're getting what you want out of stuff, but having people kind of help get you in that right direction, that can be really helpful. I know it is for me that I'll talk to friends of mine that are into the same thing, and they'll give me ideas, and that'll help me kind of inspire me to do other stuff myself. I also think that that I don't want to say don't, be cautious of putting pressure with expected outcomes on things like this, on things that are artistic endeavors, right? That just remember, and this is going to sound super cliche, and I always hate to say this, but the pleasure from music is the process and not the outcome. And so I think the less we can be focused on, I have to get to XYZ point, I have to make this, do this thing, I have to get to here, the less we can make that be the measure of success or failure in the endeavor of making music or art of any kind, the happier we're going to be. The idea is to enjoy the process of making music. Now, that doesn't mean that there's never frustrations. There's always frustrations. I can tell you, whether it's, hardware problems with gear, a module not working the way you want it to, a cable going bad, MIDI latency with your DAW, whatever it is, there's always frustrations. But try not to have those frustrations be based on not achieving a certain outcome. It's like, I haven't, gotten a #1 hit yet, so I've failed. And it's like, anytime you have that expectation of either this outcome or its failure, that means that almost all of your time will be failure, because you'll almost never have the outcome, right? Until the very end, if at all. And so the more you can focus on, as long as I'm having fun making music, enjoying what I'm doing, I'm making stuff that is a pleasure for me to listen to, I'm dancing while I'm playing it, whatever. Take the pleasure in the act of doing it, and try to take the pressure off yourself of having the judge of success or failure be one particular outcome. Because maybe you end up with a different outcome that's even better, but because you didn't get the outcome that you expected, you still feel like you failed. And that, for me, is where I think a lot of this kind of artificial stress can be created in our own heads doing stuff like that. So try to just have fun with it, and that doesn't mean just always screw around aimlessly, but it just means that if the goal is to be better than you were yesterday, rather than the goal being this one particular outcome, you'll probably be a lot happier, right? In improving each and every day, right? Let's see. Let's see. Why? Because I didn't have it yet. I don't know what that means. Effect experimentation is great in MetaModule. It is. Actually, that for me was my favorite use of the MetaModule, was that you could try things in your rig and be like, I think I want a frequency shifter, but I'm not sure. So I'm going to load a frequency shifter from VCV Rack into the MetaModule, and I'm going to have it in my rig for a while, and I'm going to play and go, you know what? I do need a frequency shifter. So now I'm going to actually buy a Coslin or whatever. And then I'm going to say to the Meta, okay, well, I might want to try this effects chain of this, this delay with this different delay into this reverb. So I'm going to build that chain in the Meta module using VCV Rack, and I'm going to try that out and go, you know what? I don't actually need the 2 delays. Maybe I only want 1 delay, and that saves you money when you go to buy the actual hardware. So for me, that's the best use of the Meta module. I think it's really, really good for that. Very, very good for that. The struggle is real. Yes, it is. Greetings from the Netherlands. What's going on, Frankie? Love your streams. Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm an inspiration. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. It's always nice to hear that. Hopefully it helps and inspires you to do stuff that you enjoy. That's the whole point of these streams, of spending the time to do these. All right. I've been working at this for 3 hours and I should be a master now. Yeah. At one point I spent 6 months practicing Asturias on the classical guitar and it was nowhere near ready. Yeah, practice takes time. And I think that, one of the sad realities is that practice is the only way to get really good at something. But it is no guarantee that you will ever be really good at something, right? Some things are more difficult than practice. I guarantee though, if you don't practice, you will never get good. That is the guarantee. But the hard part is that there isn't any guarantee on the other side. That if you practice enough, you'll be the best in the world. I could practice guitar, 20 hours a day, 7 days a week for the rest of my life, and I will still not play like Stevie Ray Vaughan. It just won't be a thing, right? So I can play Stevie Ray Vaughan songs. I can play his riffs, his style, his gear, his intonation, but I will never play like him. I will never be at that level, me personally. And that's the thing. There's no guarantee. Some people have the talent. So if they put the practice in, they may be that good or even better, right? So it's not to say no one will ever get there, but what it is to say is that there is no guarantee that infinite practice will make you the best at something, right? The only guarantee is that if you don't practice, you will never be that, right? So you can't get there without the practice, but practice won't necessarily get you there. So I know that's not necessarily the most positive message, but it's the most real one I can think of. So let's see here. Meta doesn't seem to be clocked in your setup. Do you prefer the non-timed effects on there? Actually, it's not clocked in my setup right now. Sometimes it is. I just, when I did this patch, I didn't clock it. I've got a clock out from the PAMs. I could just plug right in there. But to be honest, I don't use the timed effects very often because it's set up as master effects. And for the type of music that I do, they're just way too dramatic. And I like the effects to be way more subtle when I perform. So I tend to use the filter, the riser, and the space more than anything else, probably in that order. Filter the most, riser second, and space third. I almost never use the gate, the delay, or the loop. And again, just because of the style of music that I do. For some people, those effects are great. But for the style that I do, they're just, it turns a really cool, deep hypnotic techno track into an EDM track really quick when you start to use those effects. So I just kind of stay away from them because they don't fit. So because of that, the clock is not as important because the ones I'm using aren't the clocked ones. So anyway, what else? So the black box is like a sidekick to the modular synths. Yes. So again, this goes back to something we were talking about earlier. Like before you get gear, I always try to think about like, why am I getting this? What do I need this for? What am I going to use this for? And, or, instead of going that direction, what I tend to do personally more often is I'll say, I want to do this particular thing. Can I do it with the gear that I have? And I'll try to find a way to do it. And if I can't, then I'll be like, okay, well, what would I need in order to be able to do that? Then I'll start to look for pieces of gear that do that thing. And that way it allows me to compare things and say, okay, in this setup, for example, I don't have any samples in my modular case at all. I'm not doing anything with samples at all. So for me, I wanted to be able to play loops of certain things that I'm not doing with the modular. So for example, sub basses for me, it's a real pain to do in a modular to get them to sound right with processing. It takes a lot of modules to get that to sound correct. And so for me, I would rather just record those loops and have those play here so that I can use those in my productions and fill out that low end without having to create that each time in the modular. So that way I can keep my case a bit smaller. So looking for that, I was like, okay, I need something that can play loops, that can play them in time, and that can time stretch those loops. So that starts to narrow down what's possible, like what gear I can use. Like there's some things that can do it, but don't do it very well. Like for example, I was using the Digitakt 2 for a while, and it has the kind of pseudo stretch mode, which doesn't really do what I want it to do. There's too many artifacts. It ends up not sounding exactly right. And so I was like, okay, well, so that one's out. Black Box does it really well. Octatrack does it really well. And then there's a few other samplers like, MPCs or devices like that do time stretched loops really well, right? And then you can adjust tempo, and you're not changing necessarily the pitch and all kinds of stuff like that. So then I say, okay, these are the ones I have to choose from. So in my studio, I have that can do this. I have a Push 3, I have the Black Box, and I have the Octatrack, right? I don't have an MPC. But those are like, I think that's it. Yeah, I mean, those are the three that do this really well. So I was like, okay, now which do I prefer? And if you saw the live stream last week, I was using the Push 3, and I was playing around with that, using it for loops and doing some processing through it and stuff like that. It just, for me, it was way too big to travel with for the limited use that I was using it for. Now, it could do a lot more, and we talked about this on the live stream last week. It could do a lot more than what I was doing with it, but if I start doing that, I'm taking away from the fun part of making a lot of stuff live in the modular. And so I was like, I don't want to do that just so I can justify having this piece of gear. And so I said, okay, I'm going to pull that out, and I'm going to go back to using, you can't see it, it's up there, using the Analog Heat Plus effects for my end of chain processing, so that I can get that sound that I want, that kind of more polished sound at the end. And then I needed something for samples. So now for me, I was deciding then it was either Octatrack or Black Box. Black Box is smaller, easier to carry, does what I need it to do. So Black Box won out. Now I will say one of the reasons too that I'm using the Black Box and kind of experimenting with right now is I have a thought that I may switch to a 1010 Bitbox Micro in my case so that I can do this exact same thing, but have it be in the case. So it's one less box that I carry with me when I travel. But that means taking something out of the case, making some room for it. So I've got some modular grids where I'm experimenting around with what would I take out and where would that fit if I put the Bitbox Micro in. But the good thing is that the Black Box and the Bitbox use the same firmware. So I can build up patterns and presets within here and samples, put them on the SD card, and then I can load them into the Bitbox and I can use them on there. The Bitbox Micro only has 8 tracks instead of 16, so I would have to do some changes, but it would save me one box, be able to have everything inside the case. And I think it would still use the Launchpad to control it, although I am looking forward to when the Noisite drop comes out to use that to control Black Box as well as some other things in my setup. So yeah, so that's how I'm using the Black Box. Let's see here. Just skipped here. 35 years on violin, still climbing. The journey is sometimes the goal. Yeah, I mean, I agree. And I think that's the same with it. And that's kind of what I was going back to at the beginning of this. I appreciate that comment because the idea, like if you're going to be a violinist, somebody who's going to dedicate themselves to playing violin, you're setting out on a journey that will be a lifelong journey of learning and improvement and practice and a lot of pleasure from playing an instrument, whether that's the violin, whether it's a piano, whether it's a guitar, whether it's cello, whether it's drums, it doesn't really matter. But for some reason, as soon as it's electronic and it's in a box, people are like, oh, that thing should be magic. It should take all of this out of that for me. And that was where we started with this, is that I don't necessarily get how people get there, but it's such a prevalent thought in this whole world of synth hardware that I wanted to talk about it. So let's see here. Yep, you have to enjoy the journey because there isn't really an end. If you do it right, there's never an end. Are there any courses you would recommend? I mean, obviously I would recommend my courses. If you want to do improvised live performance, check out my hardware performance course. If you're interested in using hardware performance gear in your productions and using your productions in your hardware, I would recommend the hybrid production course. Both are good. They're a lot of fun. They're both on sale right now for a limited time. The next session starts next week, the June session. And if you sign up right now, they're 40% off. So there's a link in the description below, circolive.com/courses, and you can go sign up for that. Sign up for it today and you get 40% off. So I would definitely recommend that. There's a couple of other ones. If you're interested in modular and from kind of a big picture idea of modular, and you're already in modular. So I would say don't do this course unless you're already a modular person and you want to see thought process and workflow. If you're that person, Colin Bender's course is really interesting. It's super hard to watch if you're trying to learn how to do modular, because it's kind of all over the place. It's very much train of thought, and he's doing a lot of stuff really quick that you have to understand what he's doing in order to kind of get it. But once you get to a point, once you're kind of like beyond the beginner stage of modular, I would highly recommend his course, because there's some really interesting ideas in there about his thought process and how he builds his patch and his gear in order to be able to make something that is playable and able to be improvised live on afterwards. So I really enjoyed his a lot. It was really good. And I don't know. Oh, there's a production course that was from, there was kind of an in the box production course that was from Schlar. If you're familiar with him, he's a Swiss techno DJ producer. His course was pretty interesting as well. So yeah, check those ones out. Or if you want to do mine, sign up for those. I would appreciate it. Yeah. Let's see. Hey, Laura, thank you for highly recommending my courses. You answered the question in the next comment down, but I appreciate that. Hi from Spain. Love your sound. Sweet. Where are you at in Spain? Spain is my happy place. Looking forward to hopefully being there very soon for more than just the short term. That's the goal. I would love to spend a lot more time there. So yes. Hey, Morph Modular. See, I said they sometimes pop into here. What's going on? I don't know if you saw guys from Morph Modular, but everybody was just asking when the new cases will be able to be purchased and shipped. Because you have some people in here who are pretty hot to trot to get those. So let them know in the comments when you think they will be available, because yeah, we're all looking forward to it because we love your stuff. So thanks for jumping in. Let's see here. And yes, of course, Circo course, but I want to know what Circo recommends. Yeah, those are the ones that I've taken recently that I really enjoyed. Schlar's production course and Colin Bender's modular course. Oh, and hi from Switzerland. Sweet. Where are you in Switzerland? I used to live in Switzerland, so let me know where you are. I would love to know. Let's see. Strongly recommend to watch GDC conference from Mick Gordon. Doom Behind the Music. It's a real masterclass about how to achieve and fail. Awesome. I will check that out. Thank you for the recommendation. Beautiful topic. Thanks. I like it too. Yes, where are you based in Switzerland? I gave up the idea that I will get very good or master it in music. Man, I just skipped that. Average is good enough for me. I get that. I'm there too. Hey, what's going on? Keith? I had to send my black box to be repaired. Audio in is knackered. Oh, that's too bad. Yeah, mine's been a tank. I've had mine for like 5 years and beat the crap out of it and toured with it, and it's awesome. It's one of the things I love about it is that it's got a metal case. Is that it's like I don't ever worry that if I just chuck it in my bag that something bad's going to happen to it. So love it, love it. Let's see. For those who are interested in our case, those who are registered on the waiting list will receive final information for the pre-order next week. Sweet. That's great news. So all pre-orders will be shipped between end of July, beginning of August. Amazing. I wish there's a dedicated module for sub bass with sidechain. Yeah, that'd be pretty cool. That'd be an interesting one to make. James, if your goal is to play live, I'd also add that playing at least one show will help clarify what's important for your setup and practice. I agree completely. I get so much, I'll tie this back to when I was DJing and producing a lot. I would produce tracks and then I would play them out live DJing, and I would see what worked and what didn't work. And then I would take that information, I would go back and I would adjust the track. Now that I'm playing live, it's very much the same. You go out to play live with a setup that you think is going to work a certain way. And like, for example, I would be like, oh, I think I'm going to use this module all the time to do this and this and this. And then during the live performance, for one reason or another, you don't find yourself reaching to that module to do those things. And so that means that there's a reason why you don't trust it to take the place in the moment. So thinking about that can be really interesting, and it can give you feedback about, okay, now I'm going to adjust what gear I have, how I have things set up, how I have things patched, because I realized that it wasn't necessarily what I wanted in the moment of a performance. So I totally agree with you. It's a great feedback for that. Let's see here. Today I bit the bullet and bought my first piece of Eurorack. Uh-oh, there you go. He's hooked. Bitbox Micro is the one to get. Yeah, I love it. I just need to decide if I want to go samples in the case, taking something out, or if I want to keep it a box outside. Doesn't really matter either way. Let's see. Where are we at here? Why Bitbox Micro instead of the assimilator? Honest to God question. Okay, I will give you, so I had an assimilator, and I've also had the regular Bitbox, and I've had the black box. So, and there are pluses and minuses about each one. The assimilator is amazing if you want to do one shots, if you want to have multi samples that you can sequence trigger points. The sound quality is really, really good. The drawbacks to it are the time stretching is not as good. I actually didn't use it for time stretching at all. The size, it's a very, very big module, and I can get what I need out of something much smaller like a Bitbox Micro. And there's a lot that you can do in the Bitbox Micro or the Bitbox or the Black Box internally, as far as effects and routing and filters and all that kind of stuff that are much more difficult to do on the assimilator, because you have a small screen, you have to go into one thing, make any adjustments you're going to make. You still need external filters. If you're going to use multi-tracks coming out of it, you need filters per track, which the Bitbox and Black Box have filters per track. They also have effects per track within this, which you can use or not use, like you don't have to. But if you're going to have something like that, I could map, for example, in the Bitbox Micro, I could map 8 volume faders to the 8 tracks here, and I could have pitch, delay, and reverb. Or I could have filter cutoff, like high pass, low pass, with a pitch and a delay. Or I could set these to be whatever I want to be per channel, and it's all in one module that's significantly smaller than the assimilator. Assimilator is great for one shots. It's great for changing the quality of the sample. It's also great for using, you can use it to sequence CV from the assimilator. So you can use like basically samples as CV. So it's a totally different machine, and it's really, really good for what it does, but it doesn't do what I need it to do. That's why I sold it, because it wasn't what I was looking for. It basically, for me, was doing the same thing that Digitact was doing, and so I was using that instead. So anyway, that's it. Where are we at here? Nano modules 808. Nice. That sounds pretty cool. I heard it. Um, that is actually a practical module. Yes, it is. Yeah, Nano's great. They make great modules for not very expensive. I have the Quart envelope or LFO in my studio case here. It's a little big, and I don't really use that kind of stuff in here. But yeah, it's a good one. I love it. Um, let's see. And they are from Spain. You are correct. Simulator was overkill, too much work. Yeah, I mean, like I said, what it does well, it does really well, and it's kind of worth the effort if that's what you need it to do. But if you don't need it to do that, it's like you said, it's kind of overkill. So, and it's really big for what it does in a case that I'm trying to keep relatively compact. So let's see here. Nano's definitely a great place to start. Great for fundamentals, classic style. Been using a few of the 4HP EQ modules. Yep. Bitbox Micro is a lot smaller than the simulator. Yes, that was a big thing for me. Hey, Board Brain, what's going on? Is that Adam that's on there? If it's Adam, hey, Adam. And yeah. Let's see. Luzerne. Nice, nice. Let's see exactly where I'm at. Joel, hey, do you remember which modules you bought first and do you still use them? And for how long have you been into modular since? So I have been doing modular for about 4 years, 5 years, somewhere between 4 and 5 years. I do still have quite a few of the first modules that I got. So I actually went in pretty big because I had an idea of what I wanted to do at the beginning. So I built out a 6U104 from the start, and actually partnered with Perfect Circuit. So I was able to get some deals on modules, which was really nice to kind of build things out at the beginning. Which ones do I still have from then? So let's see here. Ericsson's baseline, the BIA, the Viol Ruina filter, the Endorphins Ghost. I don't know if I got that right at the beginning or very soon after. PAMS, and the FX-Aid, the Happy Nerding FX-Aid XL. So yeah, those ones were all there. And then if I go to my studio case, I've got quite a few in here. They're from that time as well. I have the ADAC Intuitive Quantizer, the Lapsus, Memetic, the Quart, the Nano Modules Quart, the WMD Performance Mixer Mark 1. So yeah, all those were from that first kind of batch of stuff that I did when I built out that first performance case. There's actually a video on here way back when about building out that first case. So you can see what we're still in there. So some have survived, some have moved over to the studio case, some have been sold off. And yeah, it's constantly evolving process for sure. So let's see what else. Modular gear. What are 1 or 2 modules in your big case that you wish you could fit into the performance case? That's a good question. Let's see here. From the big case, I don't know. I mean, if it's something that I really want, I generally make space for it. But yeah, most of the stuff that is in the big case is not necessarily just because of size. It's because of playability. So if it's not something that's really quick and easy and intuitive to improvise on live, I generally don't put it in my performance case. It generally stays in the studio case. So I have a bunch of modules like that. But yeah, I guess, I mean, I think there's a bunch of utility things I would just have in here just in case, but not necessarily. I guess, yeah, I mean, I don't really think anything that's there that I would have to move over. I've made space for all the stuff I really want. Otherwise, it's not in there. So, Yeah, let's see. Think of getting LXR 02. Has anyone here tried that? Yeah, it's good. It's a good sounding drum machine. Art, hi. Just about the Torso T1, and I feel like I will still need to get an Oxy One MK2 for sure. Yeah, I mean, it's, again, I don't want to get into which is better than the other, but I will say that the T1, the Oxy, and the Hapax are all at the top of their class as far as outboard sequencers go. I would say that each one is very different and has different positives and negatives. And so again, it comes down to your workflow and the type of music you're going to make and what you're going to do with it. So the Torso is really great for generating random ideas, for getting things to the machine is really great at creating stuff. And so if you're looking for things as like idea generators and stuff like that, the T1 can be great for that. It's much smaller, and it's really a stripped back workflow. So that can be very, it's a lot fun to use if that's exactly the functions that you're looking for. It misses some of the depth of the Oxy and the Hapax, but that's because it's smaller. So it's like there's this trade-off. And then, each one of them has their own things, and everybody's kind of selecting in the world of outboard sequencers, which have become really popular now. Everybody's kind of selecting which one they want based on their use case. And there's a lot of great reasons to get the Torso, particularly if you've got limited sources that you need to send it to that you want to keep track of. It can be great for that. So if you want to sequence like one lead voice, it's great. If you were to go with an Oxy, I don't know that you would necessarily need the T1 as well. Like if you got an Oxy or a Hapax, they do a lot of the same stuff as the T1, plus a lot of other stuff as well. So you might keep it if you really, really love it for a particular voice, but you might not necessarily need it if you went with one of the others as well. So again, preference, workflow, it's geared deciding decisions all the time. So let's see, how can we connect in Vancouver for some one-on-one training and advice? Definitely shoot me a message, like Messenger, Instagram is always a great way to DM me and ask about stuff. I can do Zoom one-on-ones if you like that. I sell like packages of one-on-ones. If you want to like buy 5, you get 6 free, or you get a 6th free. If you want to do that, or if you want to do one of the course is a combination of online video plus Zoom group sessions and one-on-one. So you get kind of all of that with the course. So definitely reach out for that, and I would love to do that. And plus I get to Vancouver sometimes, so we can meet up in person when I go there the next time. Let's see, great to have those two options. After getting Rhythm MK2 and watching your numerous mentions of it, I do agree it's amazing. Ended up getting a 3rd recently. Absolutely love the MK2. Yeah, I love it too. It's, I've actually sold a lot of gear lately because we're going to be moving soon, and I was trying to clear everything out, and the Rhythm is one of the things that has never shown up on the for sale block because it's just too good. I love it too much. Let's see, where are we at? Do you use a subwoofer in your studio? I do not. I have kind of a weird setup in the studio. So I have some Atom Audio near field monitors that I use pretty much all the time. But then I also have some PA speakers, some EVs that you would use as kind of a PA for a small room. And I use those as to kind of check sound for things that have low end, because those have very big low end drivers in them. So I can get kind of the impact of a sub, but I don't have a dedicated sub. I would like one, but I just haven't gotten one at this point. So no, I do not have a sub in the studio. Let's see, I think something like Fadervox UC4 is a good MIDI option for MIDI style performance mixer. It is, it's small. So, there's a couple things that you lose when you go with something like the Fadervox. The faders are pretty short on that particular one, as they are on the, what is it? Not the PC12, the MX12, something it's called. I don't know, whatever the one that has the faders on it. They're short. The launch control has much longer faders, which is nice. Something that I love about the Exelon mixer is that it has really long faders, so that you actually get a lot more finite control over what you're doing. So like every, centimeter of travel is a certain amount of increase in volume. And so when you've got a really short one, every little movement is increasing the volume a lot. So I prefer longer faders whenever I can. So yes, it would be good for that, especially if you're not going to be messing with stuff much. If it's just kind of all the way up or all the way down. If you're looking for fine control, you might want to look at something that has a bit longer faders. That would be my bit of advice. But that's a great one because it's really easy to program as well. It's very small, and it's also got the buttons on it, or knobs on it, so you can save, and you can also save different like presets just like you can on the launch control. So that way you've got a lot of different options, and you can kind of scroll through presets to do different things, which is pretty cool. So anyway, James played his first show in February. I heard all about that. It was pretty awesome. Which is the most inspirational gear for me? Man, I would say different things for different things. But I think if I had to pick one thing that inspires more ideas than anything else, it would probably be the Oxy One. Even though it doesn't make any sound, but just the way the workflow works, particularly now the MK2, there's a lot of things that this one does that are really, they inspire some really cool and interesting ideas that, the Mark 1 also has a lot of things that inspire really cool ideas. And then you have a lot of control to go back in and adjust individual parts of that to make it exactly the way you want it. The Mark 2 just kind of took that to another level. So yeah, I would say probably that. And then as far as, it's kind of a cop out, but my modular setup is like the other piece of gear. Like for me, this is one instrument. It's not a combination of a bunch of different instruments. It's one instrument that's made to be played as an instrument. So as a synth / groove box mixer drum machine, it's, for me, super inspiring. Like I can sit down and just start playing and just like make stuff up. And that's, that's the way I do my live shows. And that's one of the reasons why I love this particular setup the way it is. So anyway, where are we at? Did I skip ahead? I might have. Oh, there we go. Did you get a chance to play with the Erica Synth Hex Drum? I did. Trying to decide on a drum machine to pair with my small modular rig and Oxy One. Looks like it might be worth waiting for. So I did, and I will tell you a couple of different things about the Hex Drum. It's beautiful. For one, like it looks cool in the pictures, but when you see it in person, it is a sexy drum machine. Like it looks really nice. The whole vibe of it is very cool. It's this cool combination between, retro 909 plus modular plus this modern look. The color scheme is cool. It looks beautiful. So if aesthetics are inspiring to you as they are to me, the Hex Drum is an inspiring piece of kit. It's very cool. I will say that the sounds were, for being something that's modular, like because it's not modular, but it's basically based off of a whole bunch of modules from Hex Inverter. So for something that's modular, it felt like the sounds were not quite as flexible as I would have thought for something that's modular, although they sounded good. For me, I needed to play around a bit with it, and I didn't have enough chance to in the little room there because there's a lot of people waiting in line. So to really kind of dial in the sound, I wasn't able to use the master overdrive as much as I wanted to really hear how it could thicken up the sound. So it made the sound all a bit thin. And the sequencer was cool, but some of the labeling didn't make sense to me where it was. So it was a little bit clunky workflow wise. But I would say it's definitely worth it. It sounds like price wise, it's going to be pretty amazing. I think they were saying it's going to be in like the sub $700 range, if I'm not wrong. So, or right around there. So that's going to be awesome if they can hit that. I would say it's definitely worth it. It is big. So depending if you're going to be, you were talking about wanting to pair it with a modular. I don't know if you are planning on using it to go out and gig with, but it is a big piece of kit. Like it's the size of a 909. So it's it's as big as this whole, probably bigger than this whole level of my modular. So in that case, that may be a consideration. Size wise, it's very big. And one thing too, if it's going to be your only drum machine, you should definitely try it first if you can to see if you really love the sounds, because it's not a sample-based drum machine, and so you can't swap out the sounds if you don't like them. So once you get it, those are your sounds. So if you don't necessarily gel with it, you would be unhappy right away. So all of those things to consider. I would say if you like the sounds, if you like the workflow of it, it sounds like the price point's going to be great and it's beautiful. I would say it would definitely be something worth getting, but it's not necessarily going to be for everybody. So I would definitely give it a try first. So anyway, let's see where we at. I have the rhythm and oh my God, that thing slaps. Yes, it does. I still struggle to properly bring it into the mix. I find myself still forced to always do a specific track or jam straight on the rhythm. Yeah, it's one of the things that can be really tricky with Elektron devices in general is that there's like, as far as fitting things into a mix, gain staging things properly, using overdrives properly, all of that kind of stuff. There's a lot of different opportunities within every sound to gain stage. So you can find things being wildly off if you haven't really spent a lot of time on it. And so I get that. It does take a little bit to get things to all fit together, for sure. But like you said, slaps. I mean, it's worth it in the end, I think, just because the sounds that come out of it are so great. So anyway, let's see here. Took the first baby steps ordering an Arturia KeyStep Pro yesterday. I like the idea of having both sequencer and small MIDI keyboard in one unit to play around. Yeah, those are cool. KeySteps are great. I have a small one over there. They're again, for me, it's kind of like the launch control. It's like that utilitarian thing that's like, oh, I need a sequencer. Oh, I need a keyboard. Oh, I can bring that right in, and it's great. I am a terrible keyboard player. And so for me, having keys in my live setup is not important. It's, I've got keyboards here in the studio that I use and MIDI controllers with keys because I'm fine when I have time to work things out, but I'm not an improvisational keyboard player. And so for me in my live setup, it just doesn't make any sense to take up that space. But that's a good one if it's something that you need in your setup, for sure. Let's see, I was thinking about the Afterlater audio mixers for my case. Any experience with them? I have only messed around with them. I haven't owned them or used them in performance. So again, it all comes down to your personal preference. And I will let you know that for me, the mixer that I use, whether it's in my modular case or studio or whatever, mixer is really, really important to me for live performance, because for me, it's the part of my gear that I'm constantly using throughout a performance. My hands are always on the mixer. I'll take them off to adjust something and I'll come right back to the mixer. So for some people, the mixer is just a functional thing. It mixes audio together at certain levels and then it's an output. For me, it's a real performance tool. And so ones like the Afterlater or like the Bartender or like the noise engineering ones, for me, they're a little too small as far as like faders, controls, being able to actually play them. Because I'm used to DJing, so I'm used to DJ mixers where you've got bigger faders, you've got space between the knobs, you're actually able to kind of get in there. So one of the reasons why I use the BoardBrain stuff is just that. I mean, obviously it sounds great and it's super functional and it's really flexible with all the things you can connect together to kind of make a mixer system. But for me, the number one reason why I use the Exelon over anything else is because of how it plays, how it feels when you're using it as an instrument. Having long throw faders is really important for me. Having enough space between them so that you're not bumping one when you're doing the other ones. You don't feel like you have to use like little tweezers to move stuff. For me, that's really important. Having things like the effect sends be the largest knobs on the face of the mixer, because you're playing the effect sends. You're constantly sending two different things while you're doing your performance. You're not really playing the gain or the balance, right? So those can be smaller. So the fact that they're small and that the effect sends are bigger, it's a really nice touch, and it makes it feel good when you play it. So whenever I talk to anybody about mixers, it's like, it's a real personal preference thing, because it comes down to how you're using the mixer. Are you using the mixer as an instrument, as part of a performance that you're playing, or is it just a functional tool to mix multiple audio signals together and output them, and you just kind of set it and forget it? That's where it kind of is up to the individual user. For me, I couldn't use one of those smaller mixers because they're just too small. Like the controls are too small. It's kind of like I used the Teenage Engineering TX6. I tested that out for a little while, and super functional mixer, and it sounds good and it does a lot of amazing things, but everything was just so small. If they would have made it 2 or 3 times bigger, I would have loved it, and I would have still had it. But I ended up sending it back because it was just too small and like dysfunctional to use. So it really comes down to what's important to you. For some people, it's important to have their mixer be analog. For some people, they don't care if it's digital. Some want effects built in. Some want cueing built in. Others don't care if they have that. Some want CV control over individual things in your mixer. For others, that doesn't matter. So it just really, it depends on what you need for yourself, for your mixer. But for me, I kind of, fair or not, I kind of rule out all those little mixers, because for me, I need some space, and I need them to be playable. I would much rather give up more space in my case for a playable mixer and sacrifice it with using smaller other modules that are less important to me. So that's my personal preference on mixers. So anywho, let's see, is the black box any good as MIDI clock slave? Yes. So basically my MIDI out is coming out of the Oxy, going into the Oxy split, which you can't see. It's right back over there. And then it's coming in MIDI in to the black box right here. So the Oxy is controlling, so this is basically MIDI master, Oxy, MIDI slave, and black box. So you can use it like that. Another cool thing that the black box has, which I'm not using now, but I used to before I had the Oxy, there's a clock out and in on the back of this, which is a CV clock. So I could actually send CV clock out into the PAMs and then split that clock and clock everything in my modular from here. So if you're using something, so like for example, the Oxy has clock out, so I don't need to do this. But if I was using a sequencer maybe in the case, or if I was using a sequencer that didn't necessarily have a clock out, I could MIDI clock the black box and then CV clock out from that into my case. So then everything could go from the original MIDI clock. So it is very, very handy for that, and really good at it. Let's see, do you ever use Acid 303 style sounds in your techno performances? I do, but not a lot, just because they become so cliche. Like right now, it's like 145 BPM with an Acid line and you're cool. So it's like, it's kind of the same with rumbles. I've kind of moved away from the whole rumble kick thing, because it just sounds like everybody else. A kick with a rumble with a 303 at, 147 BPM, and you're a main stage hero, which I don't necessarily want to sound like everybody else. So I do sometimes. I have, if I can walk this far with my headphones, I can. So I use this sometimes, which I have in my studio. I got this as a Christmas present a couple of years ago, which was pretty awesome. So so sometimes I'll use this. I also, the Erica Synth bassline module, which I have in my case here, change views here. This module right here is actually really good for 303 sounds. So it's something that I can use for that. So like, for example, Let's see here. So I can do So you can get a lot of those sounds out of the bass line. So if I want something that's acidy in a live performance, I'll generally use the Erica Synths bass line. So I have to plug something in for power here, or I'm going to lose power in my laptop. So yeah, so if I need something for acid bass, that's what I would generally use in this current setup. Just because I'm not bringing the 303. I did play a show, I don't know, say 7 or 8 months ago, that the theme of the show was it was particularly an acid night. And so when I went to play the acid night, I actually brought the my boutique 303 just so that I could do some more acid stuff, just because it was particularly for that event. But I generally don't do a lot of that. I'll do it, a little bit, maybe, 5% of a show or something. I try not to overuse it just because it's become such a cliche thing at this point. Let's see here. Yeah, I'm a very visual person. If a piece of gear doesn't look aesthetically pleasing to me, I'm not going to want to touch it. I'm the same, and that might sound shallow, whatever, but I joke all the time that I use that all my modules are black. As soon as I can get a black faceplate for everything. So the Griffin's Claws doesn't have a black faceplate available for it yet. So that's why it doesn't have one. But as soon as I can get one, I will, because I like that aesthetic. I like how it looks. I like how it looks in a dark room. When I'm playing live, I can really see the contrast between the labels in white and a black background in a dark room. So that's another thing that I really like. But again, for the music that I play, there's something about the aesthetic of it that it looks, dark and mechanical and whatever. And for me, that goes along with what I play. Maybe it's shallow, but hey, it is what it is. We're all inspired by different things. Let's see. Hello from Marseille, France. Awesome. Bonjour. Comment ça va à Marseille? Marseille. Je suis fanatique du Ricard de Marseille. So we can talk about Marseille at some point. Thankfully, I live near Perfect Circuit. Lucky you. So I'm planning on checking it out. I'm also considering a Rhythm or a Digitakt 2, but I already have the Squid sample in my rig. I'm a massive fan of the Rhythm as far as drum machines go. I think it is the best drum machine ever. It is by far my favorite drum machine ever made. So I will always put the Rhythm, until something better comes along, at the top of the heap. Digitakt 2 is an amazing drum machine if you're looking for flexibility, just because of the sample capabilities, 16 tracks, it's got the ability to manipulate samples is great. The sound is awesome. The way the compressor works in it, so that you can select which channels go through the compressor, is really handy. So yeah, it's probably, from a flexibility standpoint and usability, I would say the Digitakt is probably top of the line. And so, yeah, they're all good drum machines. It just kind of depends on what you're looking for. But I'm a big fan of the Rhythm for sure. All right, where are we at here? Have you tried the Korg SQ64? I played around with it a little. It was fine. It reminded me kind of like a beat step, like that. It was like, for me, it's in a different league of samplers of sequencers, than the Oxy, the Torso, and the Hapax. Those for me are the, top of the line. I mean, you could obviously include something like Cirklon, but that's kind of financially out of reach for so many people that I wouldn't even put it there. But these are all kind of in one tier. And then in the next tier, you would have stuff like the SQ64, Beat Step, and yeah, some of the others that are they're functional, they do the thing, but they're not as deep as the other three that we mentioned before. So, but definitely a lot less expensive. Let's see here. Talked with Gertz. He said hex drums will be autumn, cost 1,100. Ah, okay. Well, I mean, 1,100 is still not that bad. I mean, honestly, when you consider that, that the Analog Rhythm's like 16, 17, 1,800 now. I think they just did a price increase because of the tariffs. So I don't know. Show was awesome and nerve-wracking. That's the way they go. Mad respect for folks that do it well. Thanks. Appreciate that. Been loving your content. Unknown artist. Yeah, me too. Good stuff. What do you think about the new Bento by 1010 instead of the black box and launch in your setup? Apples to oranges. The Bento is not a black box replacement. It is a totally different device. Definitely not a launch control replacement because, yeah, it doesn't have faders for one thing. That's the reason I use the launch control. I played the Bento at Super Booth. I really enjoyed it. It was really fun. It sounded really good. Like the quality of the sound, I was kind of blown away how good it sounded. What it feels like to me is it is a groove box that incorporates all of the little synths that they have. So like the lemon drop and the fireball and the other ones, the different types of synths. So you have different synth voices that you can do within it. You've got a sequencer that kind of feels with the touch screen and the step sequencing, it kind of feels like an MPC with the touch screen. You've also got pads if that's your thing. If you want to play with pads like finger drum style, if you want to use them for mutes or whatever, you've got that as well. A couple things were missing when I played it. There's no, at this point, there was no master effects. So for me, you couldn't really use it as a standalone performance device. All the effects are per channel, so per voice, just like they are in the black box, just like they are in those little machines as well. So for that, it was kind of a collection of parts that didn't really have a way to make a cohesive whole if you wanted to use it as a live performance. From talking with them, it sounds like that's coming, that there will be a way to do master effects. I think they were talking about something like making an audio track that you could have effects on and then route things through it, I think was what they were mentioning. Either way, having some sort of master effects, I think would be a great addition to it. Some of the pluses and minuses, the screen looked great. The interface was really cool. I love the look and feel of the UI was cool. Like the way they designed it, it was really clean, really easy to understand. I like that very much. I was less a fan of the build. One of my favorite things about the black box, for example, as I mentioned before, is that it's metal and it just feels like a tank. Like I can chuck it in my bag and I don't ever have to worry about it. This one felt a bit more, it's made out of plastic, so it feels more plastic, if that's a thing. It was kind of like, I don't know, it felt closer to something like a Circuit Tracks, as far as like the size and shape, whereas this is a lot smaller, more compact, more kind of heavy duty build. So it just felt like a totally different thing. So for me, it was not a black box replacement at all. It's definitely not a black box Mark II. It doesn't have 16 tracks. It's not for sample playing like this and loops and all of that kind of stuff like what this does. So it's just a very different device. It would go really well with a black box, I think. That might be a cool combination, a Bento with a black box and then maybe the Blue Box mixer. That would be a whole live setup because the Blue Box has effects on it. So you could have that be kind of your master effects. So that would be a cool kind of small setup, I think. I would love to use the Bento more. I didn't get a chance to use it very much in the show at Super Booth because there was a lot of people waiting in line to try it because it was very popular. But in general, I really liked it a lot. I'm not sold on what I would use it for exactly, but I would love to play it more and see how it would fit into a live setup for me. But yeah, I loved it. If you're in the market for just a standalone groove box, it was very cool. Like and good price. So definitely check it out if you got it. Where we at? Where we at? I disagree on the rumble. I get what you say, but I find it more fun instead of the classic blown out triplet feel you can get, but much tastier. Like instead of rumbling the kick. I'm not sure where we were at with that. I don't know exactly. Rumbling a tom to a one tap delay. Yeah. So I think we're saying kind of the same thing. So when I say like rumble, there's this kind of cliche kick rumble, which has become this thing that you do really easily if you're producing an Ableton, for example, where you run your kick through, you send it out to some send effects, reverb, delay, get it to where you've got this kind of rumbly effect that goes with it. Then you sidechain that group of effects back to your kick. So you get this ducking and you end up with something that rumbles your kick, right? So you get the delay, the rhythmic delay of your kick plus a big dark reverb. So that for me, I'm not super into. Now that said, I love having that low end filled up with stuff. So I prefer things like subs, for example, something like this, which if you're not listening on headphones or good speakers, you won't even hear this. But those are examples of low end kind of subby sounds that I love to fill out that frequency spectrum. And I also love to do what you mentioned, which is using toms to give you some sort of low percussion and putting those through delays and stuff. That's for me something that I love to do. What I was talking about is more the kind of kick rumble that everybody's doing, which is like that, 909 kick with the effects chain that makes it delay to dotted 16th notes and a reverb, which is kind of like the same thing that everybody's been doing. So yeah, I think we're saying kind of the same thing. I appreciate the low end, but not necessarily the rumble. We're speaking truths today. Yes, we are. We're always speaking truths on here. What are you talking about? Let's see. Yeah, I hear what you're saying about all the processing for your low end. I get that. It's just a lot for a modular for a traveling setup for me. First module will be the battering ram. Yeah, it's pretty damn awesome. Sounds pretty killer. It's the thing again, and this goes to something we were talking about before. It's one of those modules that sounds great, but it's super flexible. So it doesn't just do one thing, so if I want a really tight sounding kick, I can do this and I can get something really tight sounding, even with drive. If I want something more boomy, I can do that really easily by adding decay. Right? So there's a lot of different flexible options that you can do with that kick. So if you're gonna have one kick in your setup, in your modular, I would totally recommend the battering ram. Also because it's only 8 HP, so it takes up a really small amount of space, has big knobs that are really easy to use, so it's playable, and you have a lot of fine control over those adjustments as well. So yeah, it's definitely a favorite of mine, if that's the sound you're looking for. All black everything, right there with you, man. I'm all about the all black everything. Let's see. Yes, don't forget to strike the like. I appreciate it. Cool that you guys chat about your show. The Ricard period of my year has started. Yes, absolutely. It's funny when I played at Superbooth and I played in the circus tent there, the guys in the circus tent are from they're French-speaking guys from Switzerland, and they had watched one of these streams and knew that I liked Ricard, so they had a gift for me after I played, and they gave me a bottle of Ricard, which was super nice. Just one of my favorite drinks in the world. If you've never tried it, you should definitely try it. Yes, battering ram is the goat kick. I agree. Listening to the stream while morking out a few modules. I love that. I love that morking is a verb in your comment. And for those of you who don't know, there's a company called Mork Modules, and they create black faceplates for a lot of these modules that are out there. So these ones, like the battering ram and the Archer's Rig, these faceplates both came from Mork Modules. So that's funny that you used morking as a verb. That's so good. Let's see. I think I just discovered the thought process of their marketing meeting for a module name. Hey, Circo, I'm planning on my first Euro rack as a pure effects rack with the Ghost as the centerpiece. Playing in Digitact and Syntact, and my budget is €800. What would you suggest to accompany the Ghost? So, this is probably not going to be what you want to hear. But if you are on a budget and it's going to only be for effects, modular is probably not the way I would go. For me, I am not a big fan of using modular cases as effects cases because there's way less expensive ways to do that are just as, if not more flexible, which I would say going the guitar pedal route, or even a few multi-effects pedals. They make the Endorphins Ghost in a pedal format if you're really set on that one. But to try to get a signal into Eurorack through an effects chain by powering all that with a case that you have to buy, and then getting a way to mix those sounds together properly and get them to a level that would come out of your case at the proper level to mix with other stuff into some sort of a mixer, is going to be really expensive. And so for my money, if I was just looking for effects, I would not do modular at all. I would use those effects either in a DAW, it's the cheapest way, or using pedals. And I would go that route instead of the modular route. Now, that said, I have a lot of effects in my case, but it's not because modular is a better place to do effects. On the contrary, it is a more expensive and less effective way to do effects than pedals are. I have effects in here because I'm already using a modular case for a lot of other things like voices and modulation and mixing. So in that case, I wanted to have effects that would go with individual sounds, individual modules. So I have a lot of effects per voice in my case. And then on my two sends, I have one going to the Ghost and one going to a frequency shifter. So I don't have kind of your traditional effects setup. So that's why I have effects in my case. Otherwise, if I wasn't already going to be using modular for all my voices and mixing and my whole signal path anyway, I would not use modular effects if that was what I was doing. So I wouldn't have hardware boxes that I sent the signal into a modular effects chain and then back out of that into some sort of a mixer, into something. That just for me is a really expensive and way less effective way to go than using guitar pedals if you're going to use hardware. So that would be my advice. Sorry, that's probably not what you want to hear. So let's see. Alan Heath's 092. Well, even more reason to use guitar pedals. Marseille plus 1, Aix-en-Provence. Cool, cool. Bienvenue les Français du Sud. Cool show. Thanks for sharing. You're welcome. De rien pour les Français. Oxymeta, also great end of chain for live. It is, I agree. Do you think Syntact kicks will always sound better than Digitone 2 kicks? No. I think sometimes Digitone 2 kicks sound way better than Syntact kicks. It just depends on the sound you're looking for. Digitone 2 kicks are FM, Syntact kicks are analog. So again, it depends on what you're looking for. Very, very different sounds though. So it's not a better than, it's a different than conversation. I think more so than anything else. Where are we at here? Syntactic had the drum engines of the rhythm, did it not? Yes, some of them. But the advantage of the rhythm is not the engines, it's the engines that you can layer with samples. So the rhythm is basically a Syntactic plus a Digitakt combined together in one machine on every track. So it's pretty handy that you can have analog drum synthesis layered with any sample you want from the whole world and mix that into something, then resample that into a new sample and put it on any pad you want. So that's where the power of the rhythm is and what makes it, for me, the best drum machine ever. Right. Let's see here. Good evening from Germany. Good evening, Frank von Welt from Germany. Good evening. My old eyes prefer lighter colored faceplates. See, now Toby, my old eyes are the exact opposite because I need the contrast of a dark faceplate with white writing to be able to have my old eyes see it in a dim room. When I have a light faceplate with black writing on it, I don't see anything in that room. So for me as well, it's an old eyes thing, but my old eyes react very much to the exact opposite of what you're talking about. But again, maybe your eyes age differently than mine. KnobCon 25, yeah, I'm planning on being there. Let's see, you can never go wrong with the make noise effects. They sound fantastic. They do, I agree. Wish they would make a DJ mixer designed for Ableton like Allen and Heath 16 Mix Wizard. So I'm not sure what you're looking for. Because you can use any DJ mixer with Ableton, but it's not necessarily a controller that controls Ableton. But if you're using a mixer, you don't really need it to control Ableton because it is a mixer. So I don't know, are you talking about a MIDI controller that can control the mixer functionality in Ableton? Or do you want, I'm not sure exactly what you're looking for because there are different versions of that do exist. It just is a matter of which one you're looking for. Sounds like you lived in the French-speaking part of Switzerland then. No, actually, I lived in St. Moritz. I was working for a French company. So I worked for more than 10 years for Club Med, and I lived and worked in St. Moritz and Pontresina for 2 years when I was over there. So it was not the French-speaking part of Switzerland, but it was a French-speaking hotel in the German-speaking part of Switzerland. And St. Moritz, I mean, you've been there. It's the international speaking. Like just when you're in a restaurant there, you hear like every language of the world. So it's not particularly one thing. I think more so than anywhere in Switzerland. I think it's like the most international linguistically of anywhere I've ever been in Switzerland. So yes, from Zurich. I love Zurich. Absolutely love it. Engines, the layers and the pads, the performability, it's perfect all around. If you want all the effects bus independent from the single outs. Yeah, all those things. Your course is specific to modular gear. I have synth samplers and drum machines. They are not actually gear specific, which is one of the best things about them. They're not gear specific and they're also not genre specific, although obviously my stuff leans more techno, but the stuff that I teach in the courses is really, particularly the performance course, is really about how to set up your gear and practice and get things ready to improvise live. So it's geared towards improvised live performance. And that live performance isn't necessarily in front of a crowd. This might be, I just like to jam on my own, so I want to be able to better use the gear that I have. So there are things that refer to modular, but it's definitely not modular specific. There's only one section, there's only one video out of 50 plus in the course that is specifically for modular. And it's really more about selecting modular. And if you choose to get into it, what's a good way to get into it? But I've had people in the course who are 100% modular taking the course. And then I've had people that use all different sorts of hardware. In the last section, there was a guy using just a Push 3 standalone with a MIDI controller. I've had people using iPad with Digitact. I've had people using, dozens of hardware synths, all the Electron boxes plus, individual synths like, Moog Minotaur and a Behringer Crave and a whatever, all different kinds of synths. Some sequencing internally, some using the Oxy. I've had people in my courses using the Hapax, using the Torso, all sorts of things. So no, it is not at all, the courses are not at all gear specific. Now, if you do the production course, the hardware portion is not gear specific. The rest of it is geared kind of towards Ableton, although the stuff that we talk about is a lot more theoretical. So it could apply to any DAW. So if you're going to use hardware with the DAW to produce, the examples are all in Ableton in the course, but they all apply to any DAW. So yeah, either one of the courses is not gear specific at all. Because I think most of the stuff that we work on in the courses is more about how to play and not what to play. It's about how to organize, how to structure, how to practice, how to write, how to improvise, how to practice for improvising, all of those things, and not necessarily what to play on, because every setup is totally different from every other setup. So no, they are not gear specific. Let's see here. Live performance course can help with all types of equipment. I have synths and drum machines and modular. Yeah, Toby's one of the people who's taken the course, so he's a good one to ask about that. Those are nice places. They are. They're beautiful. San Moritz is beautiful and super expensive. Pontresina is beautiful and slightly less expensive, but still crazy expensive. But yeah, I love it there. We went back was it 2 winters ago? 3 winters ago. My 2 sons and I went back for a ski week there so I could show them around where I used to work. And it was a lot of fun. I missed skiing there. It was a great spot. Beautiful. I love going to a different mountain every day. I love being able to ski from one part of the valley to the other. One of the things that the Europeans have, if you're a skier, as I grew up skiing, I grew up in Breckenridge here in Colorado. And when I worked for Club Med, I was a ski instructor. And one of the things that I'm reminded of every time I ski in Europe is that you guys have the whole mentality correct compared with skiing in the United States. Here it is all about get there early, leave late, as many runs as you can do. People have like apps on their watch to track how many vertical they do. I did this many runs. I did this much vertical feet in my day, whatever. And it's this kind of maximal version of skiing where when you go to Europe, it's like, I'm going to show up when I show up. I'm going to have a coffee. I'm going to enjoy the scenery. I'm going to enjoy my lunch on this beautiful terrace. I'm going to soak it all in. I'm going to have a great meal and take my time. I'm not like packing a power bar in my pocket to eat a banana and a power bar on the lift so I can get more vertical. It's about like, no, it's all about the whole experience. So you guys absolutely do it right, particularly in Switzerland, my absolute favorite place in the world to ski because of the vibe. It is top of the top, I think. Anyway, off the music subject to talk about skiing for a minute. So let's see here. How much power can you draw from the power boards in your cases? I've seen so many different specs out there. Do you use Modular Grid to mock and see the total amps before you put in the modules? So you can, yes, Modular Grid is awesome for that. I mean, Modular Grid is one of the best websites out there if you're going to get into modular, to be able to mock up cases and ideas of where you might want to place things before you start screwing things in. It's great. It's great for mocking power. Totally agree. Although each case is going to be a little different. I must say that in all of the cases I've had, so the Morph Modular case I'm using now, I have 2 different Erica Synths cases that I was using before. I have never had an issue with power consumption. So it's something to think about, but not obsess over, unless you have modules that have a massive power draw and you're using a really small case. Most cases are built overpowered to be able to handle it, particularly cases that you buy commercially. Where you might run into problems is if you're building your own DIY case and you want to try to minimize the bus board so that you can, save some money or whatever. You may end up with power issues, but generally, it's not as big of a thing as you think it will be when you get into it at first. That said, definitely check things on Modular Grid to make sure. But in general, you're going to find that things take up more space, and you'll have open spaces in your bus boards and open power in your power supplies. So it's not that big of a deal. If you have one of the Morph modular cases, there's a lot of power management capability that comes with it as well. So it's definitely something to check out. You can have things boot up in different ways and having, analog and digital things on different bus boards. So there are things that can go really into depth if you want to, but it's not necessarily a huge nightmare. Let's see here. Where are we at? Do you consider getting the new launch control? Does it even offer anything the old one didn't? I probably would have considered getting it had I not seen the Noisite drop at Superbooth, but the drop is the smartest MIDI controller I've ever seen in my life. I mean, it is amazing what it does. So my next standalone MIDI controller will be the Noisite drop. That will replace this Launch Control XL that I have right here. But I'll still keep this on the shelf because it's one of those things, like, keep it for when you need a MIDI controller. But the drop is about the same size as this, and way, way, way more powerful and functional. So worth looking at if you're looking at kind of a central MIDI control, CV control, kind of power device for your gear. But the launch control, yeah, I mean, it was definitely, it's an upgrade from this one, but it's, again, it does a few more things, but not a lot. So it's an MK2 of a very functional utility tool, where the drop is like a whole new category of devices, I would say. So definitely check it out. Let's see here. The live performance course was great. I did it in March. Highly recommend. Help me figure out that what I want to do, it should be in modular. Good. Of course, I'll help you figure out how to do what you want to do. Thanks, Toby. Yeah, that's kind of the point. Underdog Electronic Music School. What's going on, Oscar? Good to see you in the chat. Everybody say hey to Oscar if you watch his channel. If you do, even if you don't, check out his channel. We did a really fun, or he did, I didn't really have anything to do with it. He did a really fun video of when I went to visit him in Belgium a few weeks ago, where we spent a few days making music and getting ready for a show that we did. And then we did the show and then time at Superbooth. So definitely go check out that video because it was super fun. Oscar is one of the coolest people I know, and we had such a blast hanging out together. And it was fun to have this kind of like mini documentary that he made of our time together, which I thought was awesome. Like, outside of the whole YouTube world and tutorial world and whatever, it was super fun for me to have this kind of like TV show documentary of this fun trip that I got to go and hang out with a friend of mine. So that was a lot of fun. So if you haven't watched it, definitely go watch it because it was really a lot of fun. And you'll see a lot of the thought process behind this and how we made some music, how we played a show, what that show looked like. And then you can go watch the show. If you go to Gimmick Radio, or is it, I think it's just Gimmick or not Gimmick Radio. I don't remember, but it's on their YouTube channel, GIMIC. We did the live stream there where I played with Oscar. We played together. It was our first time ever playing together, which was awesome. And yeah, go check out the live stream there. It was a good one. It was fun, totally improvised. And I've been getting a lot of questions about it, actually. People saying like, how much did you pre-plan and whatever? And I'm just laughing like, nothing. We just went in and just jammed and had a good time. So yeah, that was kind of a pure expression of why I love this stuff. Because you just go in and just play, just like make music. Like, don't get in your head, don't overthink stuff, just like play and have a good time and yeah, make music. That's what you should do. So anyway, hey Oscar. What else? Live performance course, incredible value. Thank you, appreciate that. Oh, and the community too. Yeah, if you take one of my courses, you get to be part of this. We have a private online kind of social media community where you can only access it if you've been through one of the courses. So it's cool because it filters out all the shit posters. So it becomes just like this group of people that have all invested in their skills and improving their skills. So everybody's kind of in it to get better and progress and have fun making music rather than just a bunch of people that are there to just, talk about why your gear's lame and why your choices are bad and all that. This is a much healthier group. And then Superbooth was an incredible opportunity where everybody got together and became this kind of group of friends in real life. So it was so fun to see all these people from all around the world that had taken my course that actually got to know each other and hung out together and went out to clubs together and had dinner together. Super cool. So yeah, I highly recommend it to everybody. Let's see. Ouch, that takes all the fun out of skiing. It does. I didn't know there were people like that. Yeah, I mean, that's everybody here. Like they're obsessed with statistics. It's like this weird American mentality of comparing to each other. Like I did this versus what you did. Where in Europe, when you go skiing, it's just like, chill out, enjoy a nice meal, like enjoy the scenery, enjoy the people you're with. It's just that's just kind of a European versus American mentality in general, which is why I want to move to Europe. But anyway, let's see. After finishing the course, I spent some time thinking and playing with the gear I already have. Visiting Superbooth, meeting Eric helped a lot. Now I'm going back through the videos to learn more. Awesome. Love it. Hey to Oscar also. Yeah, it was fun, wasn't it? We need more Circo back-to-back torque. I agree. Let's do more, Oscar. Let's put together another show. I want to play with you again. But stay watching this first. Yeah, you can come and go. I'm good. Gimmick. Yes. Let's see. Gimmick show was savage. Thanks, man. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. We had a blast. The only negative was that little tiny room we were playing in was so hot. I was like, when you watch the video, you see me like I'm constantly like wiping my brow. I was sweating in that little room. And it was also a little weird too, because normally when you play, for me at least, when I do a live stream, I'm usually in a room by myself. Or if I'm playing a gig, I'm in a room full of people and I'm kind of feeding off the crowd. And that's going into inspiring the writing of the music that I'm playing for the crowd, right? And with this, it was a little weird because it was Oscar and I in this little booth, and then it was all glass. And outside the glass, there was a whole bunch of people that were there partying and jamming and having a great time. But we were totally separated from them. We couldn't hear them. And so we're in there like talking, and they're outside jamming to the music. So we're like trying to feel the vibe, but the vibe was like on the other side of the glass. So it was a really funny experience. It was great. And it was so nice afterwards to go out and meet everybody and get a chance to hang out and talk. But it was definitely weird because it wasn't alone in a room live stream, and it wasn't in a club with people. It was alone in a room with a club full of people watching you from the other side of the glass. So it was kind of like, it was this vibe where you like felt like an animal in a zoo a little bit, and everybody was like watching you through the glass in your natural environment. I don't know, it was really funny, but it was a blast. And Gimmick was so cool. If you get a chance, if you're in Brussels, go visit Gimmick. It's a great little bar. They have an outside patio. The street it's on is beautiful, cobblestone street, and great beer. They had homemade like mate soda. It was amazing. Like, it was a super cool spot, and they do great music all the time. So you can go there, and there's always going to be somebody doing a live set. And yeah, it was a blast. I can't wait to go back and play there again. So anyway, check out Gimmick. Let's see what else. No longer using the Digitone 2. I'm actually not in my live set right now. I am using, I'm actually not using the Digitact either, which was in my live set up until very recently. I just traveled with it when I went to Europe. And I'm just trying to really streamline as much as I can. And that means focusing on the modular, which is my favorite part to play. It's the part I really love. And then the only stuff for me that's non-modular is the things that I can't do in my case. So I'm sequencing externally. I have looped samples and control over that externally, which may move internally. Like I said, that may be a bitbox that goes in here. And then the only other thing is end of chain processing, which is my analog heat plus effects. So that's kind of it, which makes this great to travel with. I don't know if you guys have seen, but this is a foldable case. So this can just fold up and go into a rolling carry-on. And then when you arrive, you just open it up and you're good to go. Connect your sequencer. And because it's the Oxy and I have the pipe in here, everything is sequenced. Everything is patched through the pipe. So it stays patched when I close this. And I just have to connect one cable, this HDMI cable from the Oxy into there. And then I've got one MIDI cable going to the split, which is controlling the black box and the Oxy Coral. And that's it. So really super fast and easy setup. And so that's what I'm trying to find is streamlined for carrying, for traveling with, and then also quick setup, but still getting all the functionality that I need out of my live rig. So yeah, so that's why no more Digitakt 2 or Digitone 2, sorry. When you're used to play solo, do you have to change your approach a lot when there's suddenly two of you? I mean, you used to fill the entire spectrum alone versus creating parts of the whole. Yes. And then the next question, do you define roles? So we did not define roles, which is, I should say we didn't define roles in a way that we were like, you do this, I'll do this. But we did have some bit of definition where, for example, Oscar's rig was coming into my rig through the Exelon XI3. So I can plug his stereo main into this, and that brought him into my mix and then out through my performance effects. So I was controlling kind of like the end of chain and the final performance effects of everything. But as far as who was doing what parts in the mix, the biggest difference, so you asked what's the difference when you're used to playing alone and then you start to play with somebody. The biggest difference was going from not having necessarily, like only needing to listen to the final output and then make decisions, where when you're playing with somebody, particularly when it's improvised, you're really listening to your stuff and their stuff and figuring like, oh, that's cool, I need to make space for that. Or, oh, there's a space missing, I'm gonna fill that space in. And you're both kind of listening to the other at the same time. So it does make it more complex because you have to more actively listen. And sometimes, Oscar will vouch for this as well, sometimes when we were playing, it was really funny because I would think something was me, but it was him, and he would think something was him and it was me. And so like he would take something out and it wouldn't come out. And he's like, oh, wait a minute, that wasn't me all along, that was him all along. And so it's funny because sometimes you have to figure out like what you're doing versus what the other person's doing. And in a full mix, it's not always obvious what's each individual person in the mix. And so, yeah, that was really funny and made for an additional challenge. But, you know, when you're performing with somebody like Oscar, who's obviously super skilled and knows a lot about music and mixing and sound design and things like that, it definitely makes it a lot easier because, you know, he's not just going to come in and just clutter up the mix with something based on what I'm playing. He's going to be able to listen and know well enough, like, oh, there's a spot here, there's a spot here in this frequency spectrum, so I'm going to bring that in. Or what this track is really missing is this kind of cool percussion line, or it's missing this atmospheric thing. So he has a very well-educated ear to be able to add things rather than just throwing stuff in there. Like the stuff he's adding is actually adding to the quality of the music. Whereas if you're playing with somebody who doesn't have that skill level, they'd be much more inclined to just try to power their stuff into the mix. And so I think that because both of us have an ear for what we're playing, we were able to like make room for each other and bring things in and out. I would hear him do sort of build up things and I would be like, oh, okay, that's a good time to put a break, to take out the kick, to bring in some master effects while he does this cool melodic line. And then we would both kind of feel when it was coming to the moment of a drop, and then I could drop it back in. But that's because we're both listening really actively to what's going on and trying to make the track sound better rather than just trying to like push our way into the mix, if that makes sense. So playing with somebody with the skills that Oscar had definitely is a lot easier than trying to play with somebody who doesn't have that same level, but it's definitely a challenge when you're playing with somebody else just because of those things, because you have to have a certain ear and a certain level of understanding and a certain skill to be able to make the sounds you want to make so that they fit with the other stuff that's going on. So yeah, it's definitely a different world, different level. Let's see, where are we at here? Ooh, got some new people joining in. Cal, you can't buy your way out of practice. Truth. I'm surprised to hear that on YouTube. I don't need to buy something. Whoa. Yeah, I mean, that's, if ever you've watched this channel, I talk a lot about gear, but I talk about the gear that I own, most of which I've bought. Some of it has been kindly given to me by companies, but never in exchange for reviews. I don't do reviews. So I use the stuff and then I show how I use it. And if I don't use it, you don't see it on the channel. It's not like I'm going to be like, oh, I got paid to do a review for this piece of gear, so now here's this artificial use of that gear. That's not really what I do. So yeah. So for me, the most important thing is practice, invest in yourself, build up your skill set, take a course, watch a video to teach you something, get a mentor, practice with your gear. Like that's what's going to make you better. Not buying the hot thing that everybody says is cool, or buying the thing that artist uses and they sound awesome. So that means if I buy the thing, it will make me sound awesome. This is just not, this isn't the channel for that, if that's what you're looking for. So we'll talk a lot about gear. I'm happy to answer questions honestly about any piece of gear that I've used. But this will never be one of those things like, oh, if you just buy this thing, you're going to be a hero. Not this channel. So let's see here. Hi there, yours and Oscar's first video together talking about battering ram brought me into modular. Awesome journey till now. Thanks for that. You're welcome. I'm glad. I mean, see, now there's an example of somebody saw a video and bought something, but it's not that you have to buy the thing. Like we're going to say if we like something and if we don't like it, just like what we were talking about earlier, there's certain modules that I've tried that I really love. There's others that I've tried that I don't love. And I'm happy to let you know which is which and why. And that's not to say some are good, some are bad. It's that I've connected well with some, or I've not connected well with others. And that's a me thing more than it's a piece of gear thing. I have certain requirements that I want from my gear. And if I don't get that, then I don't necessarily use that piece of gear. But that doesn't mean that it's good or bad. It just means that it aligns with my requirements. So let's see. How many voices do you have in your case, and how do you cycle through them when changing tracks? So I have a lot of voices in my case. So let me show this view. So we'll go through them. Battering ram, Archer's rig, Bastille Pizza, all in this row, each with some effects that go with them potentially. Then I have the Noisite Warp, then which can be 4 tracks, but I'm only using it as 1. Then I have the BIA here. The Koslin for me acts like a voice, even though it's not an oscillator, because it's on a send, so I can send multiple sounds to it, and then it frequency shifts them and goes through a filter, and it comes back into a track as if it were a voice. So that for me is kind of a voice, but I won't count it here, but whatever. Then Ericsson's bassline, Percon's voice, Polycinematic, and then the Oxy Choral, which is actually 8 voice multi-timbral. So if you count this as 1, I have 8 voices in my case, but if you count this as 8, I have 15 voices in my case. So it just kind of depends. And then that's just in the case. And then with the black box, I have another 16 tracks. So this could be potentially 31 voices with all of this. And the question was, how do I cycle through them when I'm changing tracks? So what's interesting is that because my sets are all 100% improvised, I don't have anything pre-prepared. So I'm not trying to get from one track to another in the traditional sense. So I don't necessarily need to think about it like that. So what I'm doing is I'm morphing over the course of a live set. So it's almost as if it's one long track throughout the night that has different moments and moods and, you know, motifs all the way through the night. And so because of that, it means that I have a bunch of different options. So let's go, for example, to something easy like a kick drum. So if I'm doing something that I want this to be like, you know, aggressive kick drum, I can do it like that. But if I want to tone things down, I can just change my kick drum and have it be a completely different type of kick. So I don't have to go to another kick and then another kick and then another kick. I can just make this into the kick that I want. And I can do that slowly over time, or I could do that during a breakdown. So it allows me to be really smooth with moving from one track to another, from one section of the night to another section of the night. So having modules in my case that are really flexible sonically is really important to me. So again, if we were to go to something like, so we've got our kick drum going here, but let's say we've got a bass drum. So I could have something super acidy like this with the Eric Assins bass line. But if I don't want it to be super acidy, I can take the resonance off and I can shorten up and I can filter it. I can add a sub oscillator. I can make it into a Reese bass. Right? So I can turn one bass into a lot of different basses. And it's the same with a lot of these voices. So, you know, if we go to the Bastille Pizza, for example, so in this case, it could be a lead, but if I wanted it to be a bass, I can switch octaves. You know, if I wanted it to be a higher frequency lead, I can go up a couple of octaves. So one voice can be bass or sub or lead or high lead or whatever. So having individual voices that are really super flexible is really kind of the secret to how I play. Being able to instead of going from track A to track B, I'm morphing individual sounds constantly and saying like, oh, this sound, I've been working on this for a while with this bass line. Let's bring in a different type of bass. So maybe instead of an analog bass, maybe I bring in an FM bass, or maybe I bring in something on the warp, which is wavetable and additive synthesis. So I can bring in different types of sounds and change up the whole mood of what I'm playing. And then I have a lot of functional stuff too. So like, for example, like the Polycinematic, this one is, let's just put a couple things here. Sound-wise. So with this one, it's a polyphonic voice so that I can make it kind of sound like chords. I have it detuned to be kind of rave stabby, so I can extend out the decay. And then I can change. then there's different types of voicing in here. So if I want it to sound like more like an organ, right? So you get a lot of different variety out of one voice. So that's really the key to be able to move smoothly from one section to another, is to have voices that you can morph from one thing into another, rather than going from like preset 75 to preset 103. And you have to find some way to make that awkward jump sound natural. It's much easier when you can morph sounds by physically changing the sound design of individual voices. So that's kind of what I go for. Let's see, you don't use samples. Yes, I do. That's everything that's in the black box. So the black box right now has samples like subs and atmospheres and percussions and top loops and vocals and lead stuff. Right? So I've got a bunch of looped random samples in there, and I have a whole bunch of sets of loops of samples like that I can just kind of go to. So if I'm doing something, so let's just go back to what we were doing here before. So that's just stuff from within the modular. But then let's say I wanted to bring in a top loop to go with that. Or if I wanted to bring in something percussive. I can bring in those loops to just kind of help fill out the sound, or something like a sub maybe. You can see how these can fit in. And if I wanted to bring in, let's say, a vocal, it has to start over. Right? But if I was to take out all of the things now that are coming from the samples in the black box, that gets us back to here. So this is all the stuff that's non-sample. And then if I was to take out all the things from the case, that's only the samples. And then I can bring. Right? So you can see there's like different combinations of samples and live stuff. But generally, the stuff that I use for samples are things that are more complex than what I want to hassle with making in the modular. So that's generally subs, atmospheres, percussive loops, and vocals is really what I put in here. Because those are either difficult or less possible to do in the modular. So I don't put those in there. Anyway, let's see here. Really like the improvisational aspect of modular compared to Electron Gear, which needs a bit of preparation and sound design. Did you start with a few modules or went straight for big boy modular setup? So I was actually doing all Electron Gear, and then I started bringing in modular stuff to do different voices and do different stuff. I'm still a big fan of improvising on Electron stuff. Like, you can pre-prepare a lot of stuff on Electron Gear, but it's also really good for improvisation as well, as long as you have some way to control things. So things like the launch control, to be able to control multiple tracks at once, so you don't have to go from track to track to make changes. But if you do that, it's still actually very possible to do improvised performance on the Electron Gear as well. But I jumped right into modular because I knew that was the direction I wanted to go. Was to basically build a modular rig that was kind of self-sustained. So if I was to take out my samples in this, I could still play a whole show. It's not a problem just using this. This is just stuff that adds in some extras because I can, but definitely not necessary. But this, the whole design of the whole modular rig was designed to be a self-sustained I can play a whole show with just this rig. And I jumped pretty quickly into just that. So let's see here. So happy to make it live. Good to see you live as well. I've been binge watching a lot of your videos recently. Awesome. Thank you. Keep on rocking from London. Sweet. Hope to get to London on my next trip to Europe. I haven't been in a while. Let's see. Toby. I think it's difficult to know what to do with modular until you start messing with modular. Fortunately, VCV Rack is free. Yeah, I agree. VCV Rack is a great way to kind of help give you a direction. You can also have a lot of fun with a little gear. Currently, I'm jamming with a Black Noir and Euclidean circles with a little bit of modulation and LFO. Yep, no reason to go all in if you don't want to. Can you preview the changed voices, or do you morph whilst the audience hears the changes? So it's funny you say that. When I first started my first case that we were just talking about, I was actually using the WMD Performance Mixer Mark 1. And one of the reasons why I picked that one was because it had a cue. And coming from the DJ world, I thought I was going to be queuing up stuff before I played it. And I quickly moved away from that, because as soon as I would cue, I would detach from the crowd and I was no longer hearing what I was playing and what was playing out live. And so because I modulate everything, things could go on for too long at that point if I wasn't listening to them or I wasn't getting a good feel for what was happening. So I didn't like to do that. So now I actually do everything out in the open. Or the other thing that I do often is once you get to know your gear well enough, you can change settings without doing anything. So for example, let's just use we use the hi-hat as an example. So if I want a short closed hi-hat that's going to be kind of 909 style, I can put it there. And when I hit play, that's exactly what I get. If I want that to sound more like an open hi-hat, then I can go like this. And I know that's what I'm going to get. If I want it to sound more like a ride, I can do this. Right? So there's a lot you can do without actually having to bring up the volume. But what's really key is to get to know your gear well enough to know where those settings are, what that looks like with the knobs in order to make it sound like something. So for example, if I wanted the pizza to sound like kind of a long extended bass sound that was kind of low end bass, I could do something like this, and I know that that's what that's going to sound like when I pull that up. If I want to have some more high end mixed with that, I can do this. Right? If I want to have it to be more of a low end bass rather than a sub, I can do this. If I want it to be more kind of harsh and cut through the mix with a bit more of that high end, I can do that. So you see, I can pre-do a lot of the sound design just by knowing the gear. Then what I do often is, like, let's say I've got something playing like in the background and I'm in context here. And then I bring in my low end. And I start to bring it in and I hear, that's a little bit too much high end. I can already start to move some of that off and then bring it all the way up. So I'll do it where the audience can hear it, but quite often the audience won't notice it because they're not listening for it. And I do something that I would talk about in the course, but I like to call listening through the mix. So I can hear something coming in before the audience hears it because I'm listening for it. So I can bring it in a little and I can make changes to it. Right? And then I can bring it all the way in. So the audience hears it. So being able to listen through the mix is a great way to do stuff live improvised without having to cue. Because for me, cueing, it's not as functional in improvised performance as it is in DJing. So that's why I kind of moved away from it. So let's see here. Software. Nice. That vocal sounds like Primus. That's funny. I would have never thought of a Primus vocal. See, for me, that vocal is like I liked it because it sounded like something from the Dune soundtrack. Here, I'll bring it back up again. It's gonna have to come in a sec here. I guess I can get the Primus thing. I get that reference, actually, now that you're bringing that up. Let's see. VCV Rocks lent a DFAM to friends who really were so interested after using VCV. I think semi-modular is a great start. It can be as well. And also it kind of depends on the direction you're going. I am not a big user of semi-modular devices because I'm like, I don't use modular. This is going to sound weird until I explain it, but I don't use modular for a lot of modulation. And so that's where semi-modular devices really shine, is being able to modulate them using other things. In my performances, I prefer to be the modulation and make the changes. So one thing you'll notice in my case is that I just don't hardly have any modulation at all. The only thing that I use often is the new Shachmat Griffin's Claws, because I can patch this live and I can hit record down here and I can record a modulation on something, and then it will play that modulation that I recorded, right? So that makes it really interesting to be able to use to do live modulation if I want to. But because of that, because I'm not modulating things with other things, because when I improvise, there's not a real way to know what I'm gonna need as far as timing or kind of what modulation would sound good. And I just don't have time to screw around with that while I'm doing it live. So because of that, semi-modular is less attractive to me, because that's the real strength of semi-modular, is taking a hardware synth and being able to modulate it with other things. So yes, it is a good way to start with modular if that's what you're going to be doing. If you're not going to be doing a lot of modulation with modulators, but you'd rather do it on your own, you're probably better off going straight from hardware synth to hardware synth in modular, rather than going to the kind of semi-modular in between bit. But if you're in it for the modulation aspect, semi-modular is a great way to go. So that, a little explanation for that. Hey Wabbit, what's going on? I haven't seen you on one of these for a while. Good to see ya. How you use Launch Control XL with the black box? No problem. Just plugged it up. Now I have to learn to get all the clips to play. Got to put in the practice. Exactly. And thanks for endorsing the course. I will tell you, if you're going to be using this with the black box, with the Launch Control, let me show you how absolutely super simple it is to set up. So like whatever track you select there, if you just go to the info page and you go back to here, you select what you want the knob to control. So like, let's say you want this to be level, then you go to info and you click learn and you move the knob, and then it's all set up. So it's like, it's super easy to set up the Launch Control and the black box together. It's like, it takes to do an entire preset of 16 tracks, it takes like 3 minutes to get it set up. So once you have everything built in here, like where you want the samples to go, then setting it up with the Launch Control is like super, super fast. So definitely go for it. Toby, practice, practice, practice. I totally agree. Then you know how things might sound before you turn them up. Plus, happy accidents often work out. I totally agree. Great answer, thanks. What did I answer to? Oh, how I preview and don't preview. Okay, good. I'm glad that helped. Board Brain. Have you thought more about how you'd like to use the Push 3 if you still plan to, using optics to integrate with the modular rig? Yeah, so the last stream I was using the Push 3. It's hard because I don't have the optics right now, but what my thought was that I wanted to be able to use or not use the Push 3, so have it be there as an option. So my thought was to move my I/O over to this side and put the optics next to it so that I could patch easily directly between the I/O and the optics, and then I could go out from the optics via ADAT into the Push 3. And so that way, every track from my mixer, if I went from post fader in the I/O out to the out to the push 3, I could still maintain all my fader control that I love here, but then I can send each one of those to its own unique track in the push in Ableton in order to be able to do individual processing or things like that. And then that was going to be my end of chain anyway. So having that go out to the house would be, that way it wouldn't need to come back into the case. The other option would be to send out pre-fader to the push, bring that back via ADAT, and then go from the inputs on the IO, or inputs or outputs, I remember how you call them, the ones coming in from outside, going from those, mixing that into the mixer. So I could do pre-mixer effects processing and then have everything go into the mixer and then have the main go from this out to be final output. So different ways to do it, but if one of these days I get an optics, I'll definitely look at how I can do that. The thing with the optics that's really cool is that you can have inputs and outputs via ADAT if you're not familiar with it. So being able to take those signals out to something like a push 3, which has ADAT inputs, allows you to be able to multi-track from your modular into the push 3, into Ableton, basically. So you can do effects processing, you can do, you can have anything you want. You can do parallel processing, you can do different sends and returns, you can do all sorts of stuff within Ableton to every single track from your modular. So to be able to send all of that stuff out together is pretty cool. The trick for me was how to integrate that with the mixer that I love to use. So I wouldn't be using like a launch control as my mixer to mix in Ableton, as I've seen a bunch of people use. I wanted to try to avoid that. So I still want to have like the hardware feel, but be able to process in the push 3 if I was going to do it that way. So we'll see. I still, as I said at the beginning of the live stream, the push 3, I'm still on the fence about it because even though it does a lot of things, I'm not using it for a lot, and I don't want to use it for those things and kind of suck the soul out of doing everything in the modular, which I love, and it's really big. So to be able to have the black box and the Analog Heat Plus effects, even if I'm using the launch control with it, is still less heavy and less cumbersome to travel with than the big push 3. So I want to try it out because I'm always into trying different configurations to see which ones I really, really like. But I'm not sold yet. I think I would definitely need to see how I would do it using ADAT, because right now I was definitely not getting what I wanted out of it. Because I just don't have the capability to go out and still use the mixing and all that stuff. So using something like the optics is key if you're going to be doing a hybrid setup with a push and modular. Another reason why, we were talking about why we like certain mixers. That's the reason why I've kind of gone with the BoardBraid mixer instead of others, is because it's super flexible to be able to do what you want. So the IO module that I was talking about, this is connected to the back of the mixer via ribbon cables. And so this is different outputs that you can have either be pre-fader or post-fader from any channel you want in your mixer. So I can do, let's say I selected all pre-fader, I could do pre-fader outputs of every single track in this case without having to unpatch anything from the mixer. So I can have all of my modules patched into one mixer, and then I can still have that multi-track out. So it's really handy. With this multi-track out though, I would need to physically cable from here to an audio interface, which is the way I do multi-tracking right now. But with the optics, you can put the optics right next to it. You can just patch it over and leave it connected, leave it patched for when you need it. And then all you need to do is connect one ADAT cable either to your audio interface if it has an ADAT input, or to the push 3 if you're going to use push 3. So super, super handy to have all of that flexibility without having to unpatch and repatch things every time you want to switch from live performance to recording. So we talk about this a lot in my recording course, the hybrid production course, because we're talking about how you can use things like a live rig in production without doing the old school way of, okay, now we're going to record the kick drum. Now we're going to go back and record the hi-hat. Now we're going to go back and record the lead. So this way, being able to use something like the Exelon system with the IO whether you're doing it straight into an audio interface or whether you're doing it to something like the optics and then going out to a push or to an audio interface that uses ADAT, you can just play live and hit record in Ableton. And then when you're done with your session, you go over to Ableton and everything is already multi-tracked out for you. So then you can go back in and chop things up. You can make sample packs. You can fix it and make it into tracks. You can cut things. You can fix mistakes that you made. What I like to do too is I like to chop up a whole bunch of samples, and then I'll take those samples and I'll load them into the black box so that then I can use my performance recording in my performance as a sample, as a loop. So that whole kind of cycle of play it live, record it in, so that you can take those recordings to then play live, to then record in. So it becomes a loop between the two, which is a ton of fun. So anyway, that's how I would use the optics if I connect it that way. Can you hear the Griffin's claws in action? Yeah, of course. That's an easy one to do. Let's do just a single sound here. Actually, I'll do it on the pizza. Okay, so let's say there was something on the pizza that I wanted to, I gotta get a patch cable here, sorry. Here, I'll get an uncharacteristically bright red patch cable so you can see what I'm doing. So if I patch this into one of the outputs from the Griffin's claws, and then let's say I want to patch this into, I don't know, what I want to patch this into? The FM index, which is, so that's this knob right here. So if I wanted to do this using something automated, I can patch into that, and then I can, for here. Oh, sorry, that one's not set up already to do that. Sorry, I wasn't prepared for this. Let's do it on 2 here. Set up correctly either. You know what? I reset all of these, so I don't have this set up correctly to do this. I'll have to set this up again to do this a better way. So basically what you end up doing with this is you end up that you can patch something out and you can hit record and record the movement of the fader. And then that does what you were doing with the knob. But there's a whole bunch of different ways that you can set these up. And I actually have these set up in a totally different way because I was doing something else with those recently. So they're not really set up to do the recording method that we were just talking about, unfortunately. So, I would have to do those in a different way. So I'll set those up for the next live stream and I'll show you guys how that works. But anyway, that's the idea, is you plug in the output and then you can move that, move the fader and record the fader movement, which replaces you actually physically moving the knob on the other side. So anyway, back to the chat. How good is the time stretching on the black box? Any limitations? It's pretty good. I mean, it's not perfect. It's not like, you know, the Warp engine in Ableton in your laptop, but it's pretty good. You do get every once in a while, there will be some random kind of artifacts that happen, but not too often. So like if you want to hear like, let's bring up like, so if I've got something like this, and then I end up changing my BPM. I can bring it way back down. So you can see it's pretty decent. It's not perfect, especially as you get really far away from the normal length of the sample. You'll start to get some little artifacts, but as long as you're sticking within, like, I don't know, 10, 15 BPM one way or the other, even 20 BPM one way or the other, it sounds great. Yeah, it's just a matter of how far you move away from that original recording. But yeah, it's pretty good. Good enough that that's what I chose to use for my live setups. So I've got the optics and Push 3 and planning to do similar with processing stuff. What I've done so far has been cool with using effects like beat, repeat, looper, etc. Yeah, there's a lot that you can do once you have something like the Push 3. If you're using the optics, you can use every single individual channel if you want to go out to the push. Then you can split those up between different tracks in Ableton, and then you could do everything that you would do in Ableton as if your modular, your individual voice in your modular was like a VST. So then you could say, okay, I want this whole effects chain on there with processing and different sends, and I want to have controls for those sends over here so that I can do all sorts of different things. So it really opens up the possibilities to be able to do that. And the challenge with this has always been, how do you multi-track out from your modular while maintaining mixing in the modular? That's the key. Like, if you wanted to go full on and mix everything in your push or in your laptop, super easy. You can just use an ES9. You can go out to that via USB. Then you get something like a launch control, and you've got your fader controls here, and you set everything up. But I still wanted to do all of my mixing here because I don't always want to use the laptop or the Push 3. I don't want to be kind of handcuffed to that I always have to use it, or else I don't have a mixer. And so this way, one ADAT cable, and then I can send everything out to there for the same amount of processing that I would normally do, but I can maintain all my mixing in my case. And then if I don't want to do that, I just disconnect the ADAT cable, and then I've got my other boxes the same way that I would normally do it. So I prefer to maintain that kind of flexibility rather than saying I have to use it this certain way, because there's two parts to that for me. One is I like to change it up a lot. So I'll change different devices and different routings and different patches and stuff like that. The other piece, though, is I don't want to be tied to any one point of failure for a live setup. So what if the only way I can mix is in the Push 3? And what if my ADAT cable is bad? What if the Push 3 bricks? What if whatever? I can't do anything at that point if everything is going through that. Where with this setup, I can use that for everything that it's great for. But if the Push 3 was to brick on me all of a sudden, I can just go, okay, unplug that, and I still have my full live show that I could play just using the hardware. So for me, it's a redundancy thing, as well as a convenience thing. So you can do it without the redundancy and without the convenience, but it wasn't until something like this mixing setup with the IO, with the optics, that you could have both, that you could have the option to use a push or not. And again, if I was going to play something local, maybe I want to use the push. But if I'm going to travel, maybe I don't want to haul that around. So it just comes down to having that flexibility. And I think having something with the IO, with the optics, gives you that flexibility to be able to do a ton of that stuff, whichever way you want to do it. So anyway, quick to record loops on the fly, which you could then use in later sets too, 100%. The other thing that's cool with it too, actually, is that using the optics out to a Push 3 for your live performance, you can actually set those voices to go to multiple places, if that makes sense. So you can have one bus of things that are going out to the house, and you can still be multi-tracking every single thing inside there for later use. So it's like having your whole studio set up with you, multi-tracking out while you're playing a live show in front of a crowd. So then you can have that master out if you want to just post that on SoundCloud. But if you also wanted to take bits, if you did something really cool in that performance and you weren't sure how to replicate it, you could just go back and have the recording of it, which is really cool too. To be able to multi-track everything while you play live is a challenge. Without having to bring like a huge sound card and a laptop and all that kind of stuff, you could just do it direct, which is very, very cool. What are the most weird, most strange, most uncommon modules that exist in your opinion, which are still usable to make music? Man, there's so much weird stuff out there. I think it's funny, every time I go to Superbooth, that's one of the things that always strikes me is that like how many of the things are cool versus how few of them I would actually use in my workflow and my setup. I mean, there's the thing is the vast majority of people who are doing modular are not playing improvised live sets for in a club environment. Most people that are using modular are playing, or they're using it for sound design, they're using it in production, they're using it to make ambient music, they're using it to do noise music, all sorts of different things. And so there's modules for everybody, for all of that stuff that would never ever find their way into my live case for playing the type of music that I play in the way that I play it. Right? Because they're just not made for that. But that doesn't make them any better or worse. It just means they're not made for what I'm doing. And they're pretty, I mean, there's awesome stuff. I mean, I have plenty of stuff in my studio case that would never make it into here because it's too difficult to get it dialed in to sound cool. But once you do get it dialed in after 15 minutes of tweaking, it sounds amazing. But to play it live, it's just not practical. It's not functional to play live. So. All right, let's see here. Getting better with Ableton and Push is my big limiter right now. Yeah. Definitely like how you've got the mixer set up. Yeah, the mixer setup for me is the key. You know, it's like, as I mentioned before, the whole reason why I use the Exelon is because of the flexibility that it affords you to kind of build your own, you know, one of the reasons we do modular is because we want to build our own instrument. And the Exelon lets you build your own mixer, which is really cool. You're not stuck with, you know, whatever the designer thought was the coolest thing. You have all these options. And especially when you look at modules like the I/O. So I can attach those to different things on the back of the mixer. So they can be either pre-fader or post-fader, or I can have some pre-fader and some post-fader. So I can say, okay, I want to get them all post-fader because I want to record my actual performance multi-track. Or you can say, I want them all pre-fader so they're always recording no matter what I'm performing so that I can then have those things to then fix afterwards. And you have all of those possibilities. I do things like when I was using the Digitakt 2, I would take a pre-fader kick drum out of the I/O, put it into an input in the Digitakt to trigger the sidechain inside there. I couldn't do that if I didn't have this mixer. I would have to split my kick drum with a multiple and then figure out if was I going to split it going into here. Do I then need to have a buffered multiple in order to make sure I don't lose any of that sound going out? Do I want it pre-fader or do I want it post-fader, depending on when I want something to sidechain? Well, here, I don't need to plan all that and get special devices. I can just decide in the middle of the show, oh, I want to sidechain something, plug it in and plug it in, and it's already working. So it's like having this bank of options right here is really, really super cool. And then you add in things like the optics to be able to then patch over to that and then output those is just a whole other thing. And I have my XI3, which just came out this week. I've had this one for a little while now. Thanks, Adam. It's great because I'm using it, for example, right now to bring the black box into here. So I'm mixing all of the sounds inside the black box, but then the main out is coming into here. So it goes through this mix and through my performance effects. So I've got it there. When I was playing with Oscar in Belgium, his master was coming into the XI3. So I had level control. So he would pre-mix. So everything was level set against each other. And then I have level control to make sure that it mixes well with everything I have going on inside my case. So both mixes fit well together. And so being able to have something like this just to bring those things in is pretty badass. So again, tons of options with the Exelon, which is why I think it's super cool. So anyway, what else? Good evening. Just jumped on here. We'll watch the whole stream another time. Awesome. Glad to have you. Welcome. Thanks for your elaborate and insightful answers. You're very welcome. That's why I do these things. That's why I love these live streams, is because most of the time in most YouTube videos, it's like, let's try to guess what people want, what the algorithm will push, well, whatever. And then I'm going to do a whole video about that. And then I'm going to sit there and watch my statistics and see if that was actually what people wanted to see. And with this, I think it's great because you can actually come on here and you can tell me, hey, I want to see this. Cool, I'll show you. Or, hey, I have a question about this. Okay, cool. Then I don't have to second guess and make a video about it and hope enough people watch it. This way I can just put it out there and let everybody enjoy. So, let's see where we're at here. Well, if you have any other questions, pop those into the chat. I'm going to do one last shameless plug because I don't do sponsored videos. The next session of my hardware performance course and my hybrid production course, 2 separate courses. The next session begins this week in just a few days. Sign up today. You get 40% off, which is a huge discount. There's each one of the courses has about 50 videos that are unique to there. They're not anything you'll see on my YouTube channel. There is access to the online community, which we talked a little bit about here, where you can kind of get to know other people that have gone through the courses, get to network with everybody there. You get 8 one-hour groups, live sessions where we all go on Zoom, and there are Q&A sessions about the different sections of the course. So the session goes for a month, and twice per week on Wednesdays and Sundays, we do a 1-hour group Zoom call where you can ask questions and I can answer back, and I can show you demos of things, and we go more in depth into all the different sections of the course. So group coaching. Then you get a 1-hour one-on-one that you can schedule anytime you want with me. We can do whatever you want. I can listen to your music. I can teach you how to use a particular piece of gear, or we can just shoot the breeze about gear you're thinking about getting or whatever you want to. And then each week you can send in a 1-hour video of yourself performing live, or 10-minute video of yourself performing live, and I send you back feedback via email. So we can give you feedback on your live performance while you're learning how to do stuff, so you can kind of track your progress. And then you get a lot of one-on-one help, and you get to kind of meet everybody else in the session. You can learn from their questions and answers as well. If you can't make the video sessions on Wednesdays and Sundays, they're all recorded. So at the end of the session, if you didn't make it, I can always send you a link and you can watch the session. So you don't miss out if you're in a different time zone. We do those at 10 a.m. and 11:30 a.m. Mountain Time, which is 6 p.m. and 7:30 p.m., I believe, Central European time. So we tried to get it at a place that was good for different time zones, but if for some reason you can't make it, it's no problem. They're recorded and you can always watch them whenever you want. So definitely sign up. There's a link to the courses in the video description, or you can go to circolive.com/courses and check out the courses. You can see the whole outline of everything that's in the course, and you can sign up there. And if you use code SUPERBOOTH at checkout, you get 40% off. So hope to see you in the courses. Hope you had a good time here. And until next time, we'll see you later. Keep making music, keep having lots of fun. And the next time we're gonna go over the Oxy One Mark II, because I'm getting my head wrapped around it now, and it's quite fun. So anyway, we'll see you all next time. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hope you had a good time. And thanks very much, and take care. Bye-bye.